Reveille, reveille.
Look at us now, tip to tip.
Ooh, Jesus.
Oh.
Shout out to Morning Kombat.
Do you want a margarita? Yes! My God!
To us, doing what we love. It's time to bang. Oh, yeah. I'm looking at you right there, right? Hey, we're back at it. Monday, August 12th, 2024. I can't hear myself in my own ear hole, Ken. But hey, this is Morning Campbell. When Luke's away, the donks, the art will play. Welcome on in, Brian Campbell, right at you. The BBC with that BDE. And there we go. Technical difficulties abound, but we are fixed. We are ready to go. Guys, we have and girls too, especially the divorced ones, we have a fantastic show for you on this Monday. Two spectacular guests getting a power hour each. We will open the broadcast with, hey, one of my favorite personalities in this entire game and one of the nicest guys with New England blood. It's MMA Fighting's Mike Heck. We'll look back at the box in MMA from what we saw, hit the latest storylines, and then bring on the meat, all meat. The only man who has body for days, folks. Live and direct from Colombia. Let's hope he doesn't knock it in his own goal, right? It's Luke Thomas previewing UFC 305. So much to get to on this loaded program. No DMs from Donks, no shit this week. It's a special edition. But happy to be back here. Meadowlark Studios in Manhattan. Shout out to DraftKings. Shout out to you. Those are our social channels right there. This is me alone right here. Hey, how about that? Hey, looking right at you. Hope you're starting your Monday with a little motivation, a little fun, a little optimism to look ahead. Special shout out to all our great listeners from the Paquettes over there in Nova Scotia to Bill and Jen in the RV. Hey, how about Ian McInerney down there in the law game, bro? I'm praying for you. Yeah. Love all of our folks out here in the MK land. We love you. Happy to get at it. Let me bring in my trusty producer, director friend, Long Island Luke of the Main Card Minute podcast. Long Island, how are you, brother?
Doing good, BC. How we doing today?
Doing good. So Saturday night, I was watching the UFC Apex Tour of Doom, and I was in the 8th row deep, and I tuned in to the Main Card Minute, your fantastic betting podcast that you do with Gaffney Jim Pierre of MK fame.
Dude, it was great to have you there. Great to have all the fellow donks in the chat. Appreciate everyone for supporting.
And dude, you actually, Long Island Luke, kind of blew me away here, bro, because I assumed there was chicanery going on there, shenanigans on your show. But at one point, somebody in the chat was like, yo, guys, rip that shit. And you and Gaffney Jim were like more than happy to oblige live on air. So that's this is the content people are looking for.
Yeah, man. I mean, we're going to do it anyway. If people are going to ask, we're definitely going to do it.
There it is. Great to hear from you. Hey, what do you think about today's show? Just going to be just kick people right in the feel hole?
Absolute banger.
All right, let's bang some other men here. That's what we do here on Morning Kombat. By the way, you can buy our trusty merch. I'm not wearing any of it at the moment, but it's still for sale. It's still fantastic and high quality. Go to morningkombat.store. And why don't you take a little sprinkle off the top with a 10% off using our code LIVE10, LIVE10. Hey, try it out, right? Go to morningkombat.store right now. If you're under 18, ask your parents' permission. If you're under 18, stop listening. All right, this is a weird show. That's what we do here. Are we rebuilding toward the completion of MK 2.0? Yes. Sully Sullenberger here will land the plane eventually. Okay. Sorry to the folks on Reddit, but we're working on it. All right. Hope you had a great weekend. Hope you're ready to get into the fights and hope you're ready for our first guest. Yes, he comes from the great state of New Hampshire. He's now a Southern man, but really a genuine bro. You can see him as the host of MMA Fighting's criminally underrated is it beneath the links, Long Island Luke, or is it below the links? I always screw that up.
Below the links.
Between the links.
Between. Sorry,
between the links on Thursdays and many other shows involving his last name, from Heck of a Morning to Heck Right. I got off watching Strawweights, right? Probably a few others. Let's bring him in. It's Mike Heck. Brother, how are you?
You got so many things wrong with that intro. I'm not from New Hampshire. I'm from Massachusetts.
No, you're not, bro. You're as New England as it gets, and Massachusetts is a very pretentious New England state. All right, let's not get into that. All right.
I mean, there's a select few that aren't pretentious, and I would assume I happen to be one of those. But yes, Between the Links and many other programs, and I've invited you on that show so many times. It's nice to be here and return the favor, BC. Thank you for having me. What an honor.
It's very easy to just reach for that shiny toy that is that absolute dirt hole, Jed Meshew II, who I've got a lot of love and respect for deep inside. I just don't like to show it. But Mike, I truly do believe it when I say it, that your work is criminally underrated. Love what you're doing over there at Vox MMA Fighting. Making a new kind of a new era. I mean, Ariel's still in the house. Shout out to the king there. But I love the shit you're carving out over there, man. It's good stuff. Good stuff. So thank you.
We're trying, man. We just we go out, we have a good time. We try to make it barbershop talk, more like bar stool kind of conversation. We don't take ourselves too seriously. We're honest, just like you guys. So I feel like this crossover between MMA fighting and morning combat it's just a perfect combination, BC.
It is. I'm loving the feel. Sorry to get your home state wrong. I know you rep South Carolina these days. Shout out to your son. Is he starting his own online presence here?
Yeah, he's been trying to be a YouTuber for a while. Finally let him do it, and he's doing good. He woke up this morning. One of his videos had 100 views. He was very excited, and he wants to film some golf content with his dad. So we've been trying to do a little bit of that. We're gonna do a little bit of that later on today. So
what's his lane? What's his YouTube lane? Is it just being young and cool?
He likes a little bit of everything. He likes train sets and all that stuff. So there's like a little bit of that. He likes to play Minecraft, as kids his age like to do. So it's him just playing the games on the computer and he's done a couple live streams. I mean, he knows more about this stuff than I do, and he's 11.
All right. Well, he'll be producing a few of your shows shortly. And trains are great as long as it's not the Marines. Ask Luke Thomas about that. Shout out to Osborne right there. There you go. All right. Mike Heck, we got kind of a wild and wacky weekend to recap, right? I mean, you're fired up for this, I'm sure, right?
I mean, we have to start with Vegas 95, right? I mean, the talk of the town this past weekend.
Actually, our lead story, Mike, is Charles Felony Bennett snapped his 21-fight Combat Sports losing skid over the weekend. So shout out right there. What does that show you? That never give up in this game?
I hope Tony Ferguson didn't watch Island Fight Game 4.
But to your point, yeah, we have an Apex card to talk about, just not right now. Why, Michael? Let's hit me with the solo cam here, because topic number one, guys, I'm sorry to tell you this, but boxing won the weekend again over the weekend, producing possibly the fight of the year and the knockout of the year in two separate cards, as UFC's aforementioned Apex Tour of Doom continued on in the heavyweight division. Michael, what is your boxing heartbeat these days? We talk boxing on your on some of your programming you let me on there. Have you increased your usage of late?
I mean, coming on the show obviously increased it a little bit, because I went back and watched that fight from Saturday, and it's a freaking banger, BC. I was happy that you invited me on so I could watch that fight. I didn't watch it once. I watched it twice. That's how good it was.
The fight's so nice, you had to watch it twice. It went down on DAZN there in Las Vegas. It was a Riyadh season-sponsored card, and it was Vergil Ortiz Jr., the unbeaten 154-pound contender now, improving to 22-0 with 21 KOs. By the way, snapping that vaunted KO streak he brought in, but that was not the story. The story was A, him winning the interim WBC title at 154 and becoming an instant player. It was B, finally answering all the questions and living up to the expectations we had for him. Let's not forget the nearly 2 years he missed with injuries and illnesses. But 3, you nailed it, Mike. Instant classic, maybe I said the fight of the year with a determined Serhii Bohachuk. They go the distance. It's a majority decision over 12 rounds. One judge having it even 113-113. Two judges scoring at 114-112 for Ortiz. There is a bit of dispute about those scorecards. But Mike, first and foremost, I want to get your opinion on this fight and where you leaned now with 2 watches. 47 more times you can get into Luke Thomas territory, by the way. But you said it, right? Absolute banger. And it was just like old school thrilling.
It was so good. It was just back and forth. Ortiz gets knocked down in the first round, and we're like, oh boy, didn't really see this coming. And it was nice to see him, 1, go long, and 2, overcome adversity, because he got knocked down a couple of times in the fight. I scored it the first watch, 114-112 for Ortiz, like the 2 judges who scored it for him. The second time I watched it, I scored it a draw. And I've since gone back and just looked at different scorecards and kind of comparing it to MMA. There are certain fights like that comes to my mind, like DDP versus Sean Strickland. You could have given me 4 different scorecards and all of them are not wrong. And I feel like kind of going back and seeing the discrepancy in all the different scorecards. If you scored at 114, 112 for Ortiz, or you scored at a draw, I saw some people score it, but a 4-point win for Bohachuk. And I was like, that's not a bad card at all. It was just so close of a fight that so many different cards are all correct. And I would love to see these two guys fight again at some point, but I scored it for Ortiz barely the first time. And then the second time I scored it a draw. And if I watch it a third time, I might score it the other way. Who the hell knows?
And you might enjoy it even more. Yeah, I think it is one of those, as I like to say, however you had it scored, you're probably right, because there really is no wrong score to some degree here. Although a lot of people are pushing the Bohachuk card, and he does have a strong case for the decision here, obviously with those 2 knockdowns, but being flash knockdowns, being that Ortiz rallied back, by the way, in both of the rounds he was dropped. Let's look at, there's the first round knockdown, which was a grazing shot to the ear that got Ortiz, but they went back on instant replay and retroactively ruled it. This came in round 8 in the midst of Bohachuk unloading, and he did get a clean, fair flash knockdown on a short left hook, but it was Ortiz who got up and rallied back. And here's just a little bit of the carnage that we saw there on DAZN throughout the 12 rounds. How did I score it? 7 rounds to 5 for Ortiz. When you consider the scoring, I went 114, 113. Why? 10-8 round in round 1 for Bohachuk, even though I felt Ortiz had been winning that round leading up to that flash knockdown. Round 8, though, I think is a little bit more controversial in this sense. All 3 judges, by the way, gave it 10-8 Bohachuk, but this was a round where Bohachuk dropped him. Absolutely legitimate flash knockdown, as you just saw there. But Ortiz got up, and this was, you know, a strong candidate, by the way, for round of the year as well. Ortiz just blazed back. He rocked Bohachuk and hurt him. Bohachuk had one more moment before the end of the round. It was just an absolute banger. But in boxing scoring, with Ortiz rallying back like that, it's not wrong to score that like I did, a 10-9. Comes down to your opinion and your judgment there. But I go 10-9 despite the knockdown. So that goes 114, 113. So, yeah, I had Ortiz winning 7 rounds. What was ultimately the way he did it, or the story of the fight? Mike, there's so many good things we should say about Bohachuk, and we will in a second, but I think Ortiz ultimately did land the bigger shots. And what made this fight so wonderful and beautiful, and the reason why we're actually putting it in the same conversation and debate as what? Fury-Usyk 1, which was a historic fight that exceeded expectations and was your front runner for fight of the year. It was because not only did this fight have constant action in the phone booth that you'd want, not only was it an important fight, the most important for both of these fighters' careers, so you saw them being willing to pour out more of that jug and go for it, but it wasn't just action. It was the high-level adjustments constantly made by both, which created so many ebbs and flows. Ortiz was almost dominating him in rounds 2 and 3 after the knockdown. Bohachuk storms back in 6, 7, 8, 9, and then what does Ortiz do? Finishes stronger. I gave him the final 3 rounds. 2 of the judges gave Ortiz the final 4 rounds. Both of those judges, Max DeLuca and Steve Weisfeld, world-renowned in terms of their reputation, they gave, by the way, 8 rounds overall to Ortiz, where I only gave him 7. So let's start there, Mike. If you're Team Bohachuk, it's certainly a hard luck loss because he gave everything and scored 2 knockdowns. But you can't just say 2 knockdowns and you automatically win the fight, right? It's round by round. That's how boxing works, for better or worse. What should we say, first of all, about what Serhii Bohachuk is made of from what he showed in this performance?
BC, do you think Bohachuk won pride rules in this fight?
I would say normally yes, because of the 2 knockdowns and because Ortiz's face was more banged up than Bohachuk's, except for the fact that I thought Ortiz landed the bigger shots throughout. And, Mike, he finished stronger. And what does that mean by finish stronger? He rocked Bohachuk in rounds 11 and 12. Pride rules, you're going Ortiz.
I don't think people expected that. If you told people that this would be a knockdown drag out affair, that it would be back and forth, and that it would make it to 11 and 12, and that it would be Ortiz being the one doing all the damage in the late rounds, I don't know if people would have believed it. And I don't think a lot of people really understood how good Bohachuk was until they saw him on Saturday.
Yes.
And I think what happened with Bohachuk was it's one of those sort of MMA losses where, man, you lost, but you gave it your all and your stock rose despite losing the biggest fight of your career. And I don't know how much solace Bohachuk's going to take in that, but man, this is both men shined, both men's stock rose tremendously, and both men are in line for big fights now. Like Bohachuk is I'm not going to say this is a star-making performance, but it's definitely a performance that put him on the radar of a lot of not so hardcore boxing fans. Like, I wasn't all that familiar with Bohachuk, hand up. I am now after watching this fight a couple of times. So yeah, I bet he's a little pissed. I bet he hasn't had a couple of great nights sleep since Saturday night, but at the end of the day, I think he's going to get over this one. I think he's going to take a ton from it. Same with Ortiz. Like, this was the type of performance from Ortiz where, like you said at the beginning, we still had questions. We know the talent was there, but I think he answered a lot of those questions. It was just an amazing fight, BC.
Because his career up to this point, the 21 knockdowns and 21 fights, talking about Ortiz, God, he looks so destructive. And he's got good names along the way, like Maurice Hooker, like those level guys, Mean Machine Kavyauskas. But still, he'd been blowing a guys away so early or beating the better fighters down to the body and stopping them in the mid rounds that we didn't know. Could he finish strong like he did Saturday? You didn't know all those questions about intangibles, the chin, all of that. Guys, he passed all of that. He passed all of that. Does he show you that he's flawless? No. And that's why I retweeted Dan Canobio, friend of the program here from Inside Boxing Live. He had a great tweet where he said, look, this doesn't mean that Ortiz is infallible. He's very vulnerable, but it's his vulnerable assets that make him so fun to watch. I felt the same way about Anthony Joshua on his initial title rise. He'll get dropped, he'll get hurt, but he'll find a way to win that. Ortiz is such a great TV fighter who also happens to have world-class skills. And Mike, whether you agree he won this fight or not, he's not in the position to win it if he doesn't make those adjustments that I talked about. He's got a great trainer in his corner, Robert Garcia, but he was smart. He was constantly in it mentally, as focused in throughout, but so was Bohachuk, man. The gas tank, the chin. Didn't it look at some point, maybe around 3 or 4, like Bohachuk's not going to last? I think I tweeted that. If he keeps this pace up, he's not going to make it another round. Yet he made the adjustments to begin to jab from mid-range and begin to line up Ortiz. It was such a beautiful fight. They both, like I said, fought like there was no tomorrow, which is so great to see. Does Bohachuk have an argument to win? Yes. I just can't go with robbery. I have no problem with his team, by the way, his great promoter, Tom Loeffler, who we, of course, know from Gennady Golovkin fame, really trying to use the argument with the knockdowns, at the very least, to try to force a rematch. And obviously, they believe their man won. And both guys showed so much character that, again, you can make the argument either side. But, Mike, first and foremost, easy question on the rematch. Does Bohachuk deserve it based on how close it was?
Yeah, hell yeah, he does. And I'm with you because we get this in MMA all the time. Oh, it's a robbery. It's ridiculous. Close fights are not always robberies. And I think boxing fans may or may not understand that as much as most MMA fans do these days. But yeah, I want to see it. He definitely deserves it with the way he fought on Saturday, with the way his stock rose, the adjustments, as you said, it's not exactly the same, but I got Volkanovski Holloway 2 vibes from this fight, where one guy just started off real strong.
Yes.
Was kind of getting after it a little bit, was edging away. And then all of a sudden adjustments were made mid fight. And this happened on both sides. It was like, that was a 10-round fight. We got to see both guys make adjustments at different points in the fight. So yeah, he deserves a rematch. I don't think he gets it right away, but give it to me 18 months, 2 years from now. Good grief, BC. Of course,
yeah,
give it to me.
By the way, I think the internet took away terms we use in fighting, like edging out. I put that, it's close decision. He edged him out. People are like, "Oh, did he really, BC?" Like, I didn't see any evidence of that. It's like, well, let's hold on here. We could see it again. We're gonna get to that in a second. I just want to mention the CompuBox numbers. They don't always explain the story, but they certainly help pad the argument. Ortiz outlanded Bohachuk 265 to 225, connecting on a greater percentage overall, 36.5 to 27. But look at the power punches, 44% for Ortiz. Remember, 40% is usually that Mendoza line of you probably won the fight if you landed more. Not in all cases, but in most cases. And then I look at the body punches, 101 for Ortiz, 32 for Bohachuk. So Ortiz answers the questions, and it's so important for him because, Mike, I don't know if you had been following his story, but this guy was like can't miss prospect, next welterweight guy to crash the party of Spence and Crawford. And then he had the injuries, and he constantly was rescheduling fights. And then he had that weird illness that was really kind of unresolved from overtraining that lingered and really forced him up to 154. But he showed us that the power's real at 54, even though, to be fair, he didn't damage Bohachuk's face and he never dropped him. But I do think a lot of that was because Bohachuk was fighting like there was no tomorrow. And I call Bohachuk's only pro loss. It was against Brandon Adams on Ring City, USA. And he was winning that fight until he wasn't when he got knocked out late. He has made such great changes to his game since then. He looks like a complete fighter. Will he get the rematch? Well, here's the question. Probably not, Mike. Why? Because Turki Alalshikh of Saudi Arabia, in charge of the large war chest in that kingdom or nation's continued aggressive development into the sport over the last year plus. We know he picks his favorites. We know he really, really, really likes Ortiz and wants him next against Terrence Crawford. In fact, now that he and Oscar De La Hoya have joined forces, remember Oscar put out that Clapback Thursday video basically begging Turkey to send the money and join the club. Well, they're part of the same club now. But if you watch this extended interview, which I don't have the extended version because, by the way, DAZN scrubbed it from the website. I'm not sure if that was an accident or not, but they scrubbed it from the full broadcast, and no one's tweeting the full one where Turkey kind of talks down to Oscar and makes it seem like he's daddy pantsing him. But they joined forces to stir up this potential. Let's listen in on the doubleheader they want to do.
We want to make the big fights. Crawford, if Vergil wins, we make Crawford next.
Yes, I will give Crawford big offer to do this. And let's see. And not this only. We want to see Shakur and Zabida.
Yes. William Cepeda versus Shakur Stevenson on the same card. Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
There's excellent.
Like, did that feel like a 1988 episode of WWF Superstars where they're like trying to hype up like Hogan Andre or something? I mean, there was something weird with that.
Yeah, it was very Roddy Piper, Piper's Pit, Hulk Hogan. Are you going to fight Andre the Giant at WrestleMania 3 type situation? So
hell yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the point of it. Mike, if Turkey wants something, and if the guys are willing, unlike Canelo, Tim Tszyu, and Gervonta, which we'll get into that, he gets it done. I want to know if you want this fight. Terrence Crawford at 154 in the first defense of his new title he just won last week against unbeaten Vergil Ortiz. But more importantly, does it actually make sense for both guys? Where do you stand? Because it seems like the Turkey stamp's on it, so put it in the oven. It's ready.
This to me, and I bring this up when talking about certain MMA fights too. This fight to me is like, I met a girl at 19 and she was beautiful and she's everything that I wanted, but I just wasn't ready to commit to it just yet. Give me like 3 or 4 years. And I'm not saying that's how long this needs to take for the boxing
world.
Let me
bang, bro, please.
Let me do my thing for a little while. And then eventually when I'm ready to settle down and find that special someone, this could be it. And I kind of feel that way about this fight where this fight is the right fight. It's just not the right fight right now. I want to see a couple more from both guys. Let's build this thing up a little bit. And I understand the risk in that. We've seen it in the UFC with Israel Adesanya fighting Sean Strickland and instead of Dricus du Plessis. He's just going to roll over Sean Strickland and then the DDP fight will be bigger. And then Sean Strickland was like, nope, I'm going to thump this man up. I'm going to ruin all your plans. So I understand the risks involved in that. But this is boxing. You can strategically set up a couple of fights for both of these guys that are interesting and make sense, but highly favor both Ortiz and Crawford. And then eventually we can line these two guys up end of 2025, and it's going to be a massive fight. So if they make it now, am I going to complain about it? Hell no. But would I like to see it a little bit more down the line, especially at the Ortiz side? I want to make sure he's good to go, that he can consistently get back in there with everything he's had to deal with over the last couple of years. Let's make sure that both guys are 100%. Let's make sure both these guys are at the top of their games and that they are ready to go. And then once that happens, then we can pull the trigger on this thing. And Turkey ain't going anywhere. It's not like that stamp is going to get wiped away. That stamp is that once that stamp is on there, it's probably on there for a hot minute. So yeah, right fight, just not right now.
I think you nailed it, Mike. I'm going to add more to what you said, but I think you nailed it on many fronts. And I think, look, if that fight happens next, you can't complain about it because it's like so huge. 2 unbeaten guys, a fight we would have loved at 47, of course. Now it would have to happen at 54. And if that double header takes place that those two shook about and went all pro wrestling on, I'm going to get all pro wrestling on it because that's such a big deal. But this is not the right fight right now. And I don't think it's the right fight for either guy. And I think that even trumps the belief I have that they don't want it on Team Ortiz. They're saying they want it because they want the big money and the big opportunities, of course. Vergil Ortiz just went through how your career could go south would not even be your fault with the illness, and he had to move up weight. Like it was a train wreck for a while. There were a lot of questions. That's why him answering them was so refreshing. But he's not a perfect fighter, and I don't think he's on Bud's level, to be honest with you. But that's not even the argument. I don't think Ortiz wants it. If you actually watched the live broadcast and saw that full Turkey and Oscar interview, it was interesting when Turkey said, look, if Ortiz wins tonight, we're making Crawford next. And then it was Oscar who goes, oh, yeah, or Tim Tszyu. And don't forget, it was Turki who right away grabbed back the mic. And like I said, kind of daddy pantsed him, was like, absolutely not. Turki, I think he said specifically, Tim Tszyu is not on our map anymore. And it looked like Oscar was almost dejected. And then that's why you saw him coming around again, being over-exaggerated. Like, yeah, all right, fuck it. We'll do it, right? We signed this deal. I asked for it. You're giving me the money. We're going to do it. But I don't think it's the right fight for either guy because of this. It's not big enough. Crawford has one world title right now that he just won over Madrimov. Although this is the interim WBC title, it's really a BS. It just means you get the next shot at the title. It's really like a number one contender thing. So this isn't a title fight. It would be a lot bigger when you consider how many fights does Bud have left. I don't know. This would be a big fight. It would pay him a lot. It'd be a tough fight. But think about what's actually at stake. Bud has done something so unique late in his career. Now he's finally getting opportunities at the bigger names to round out his resume. Obviously, he went undisputed at 140 earlier. He comes back and does it at 147 going through Errol Spence. And that's why when we were talking about the Canelo fight, a big part of that appeal is, dude, he can go undisputed now in 3 divisions, which has never been done in this modern 4-belt era, right? Because back in the day, you didn't have a split of the belt, so it was always undisputed, right? But why it's not the right fight right now for Crawford is, if he's only got a few fights left, why not build, if you're not going to fight Canelo, because Canelo certainly doesn't want it, wouldn't becoming the undisputed champion at 54 be your true goal? And there are marketable names out there with belts. So why not have him instead try to unify with a Fundora, try to unify with the other belt holders, and then try to revisit this? Because guess why I don't think Ortiz wants it? When he was asked in the interview, he said, yeah, sure, I'll fight, bud. This is great. It's a big fight. And then he said, also, we'd love to fight the winner of the WBC title fight that's proposed, not official, between Errol Spence Jr. and Sebastian Fundora, the champion. So, he would have to let him go down that road, become the real WBC champion if he can beat the winner of that fight, or if he can get the fight with Fundora next and go directly to the belt, and then try to circle back. And this fight would be so much bigger. I don't think Oscar wants to put, by the way, Zepeda and Ortiz, his 2 biggest active assets. Oscar at Golden Boy does not have a big list of quality names right now. He's got some big names. Ryan Garcia, obviously a big one, but he can't fight right now. These 2 are his biggest guys. They're both undefeated. You have a chance to serve them up against huge A-sides who will be highly favored to win, but they're great fights for sure. I think Oscar would much prefer what fight? Tim Tszyu versus Ortiz. It was supposed to go down on the August 3rd card, or Tszyu had to pull out because his cut wasn't healed, and then Tszyu made his own choice to schedule a fight coming up in September at home and to go in the title route and try to pick up a loose belt there. So, Mike, that long ramble is just to say, I like everything that you had to say, but I don't think it's the right fight for either of those guys. I think Ortiz, too, would probably want to get more under his belt, more big-time experience. But if Turki wants it, he may get it. It seems the way it's going to go. It's just interesting that he was so quick to cross Tszyu out, especially when Tszyu this week, when he was doing interviews, was basically like, look, I got nothing against Turki. I want to work with him. There was just some miscommunication. And I think if we're reading through the lines here, I think Tszyu realized he can make so much money fighting at home. Why not continue to milk that right now? You don't need to do this. But if Turki says yes, I don't know who's going to stop him. This is why I think we have to have a discussion in a few minutes about how much influence is too much in that regard. That was potentially the fight of the year, and a lot of fun stuff could come out of that. But we also saw the knockout of the year potentially. But before we show that, can I show you the second place for knockout of the year that happened to take place Saturday at the Bohachuk fight against Ortiz in Las Vegas? Watch this scuffle between the fans and watch the gentleman in the hat specifically, because he's about to get knocked the F out. Oh my God.
Ooh.
Good Lord. Mike, we don't condone this type of violence in the crowd, but we'll play it on this show and really just live it up. That's as clean as it gets in crowd fights.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's just such a slick knockout, too, because he deaded him, and then he was just like, all right, I'm out of here, and just walked right up the stairs very casually. There were no follow-up shots. There were no nothing. You could tell that wasn't the first knockout of that large individual's career.
I think you're right. I think he's got a few notches on the old belt. Let's set up the real highlight that really is in the leadership position at the moment here in this knockout race for 2024 in boxing. It happened at the top-ranked ESPN card in Albuquerque. Angelo Leo, you may remember him boxing on Showtime back in the day, former world champion, moved up in weight, fighting the champion Luis Alberto Lopez. This is Leo in his backyard. He's a 3-1 underdog. And at this point in the fight, he was up by a point on 2 scorecards, down by a point on the third. And Mike, Holy shit balls. Look at that.
Oh, man.
Head
So
slamming
clean.
off the canvas.
Golly. Let's see. Oh, my God. Bam.
Mike, I
Right
think
over
when
the
you're
top.
talking about debates of knockouts, when you add in some of the things like won a world title in his hometown as a decent underdog, it's got to add to it.
Yeah. I mean, the stakes were gigantic. And I think a lot of people were talking about maybe Anthony Joshua having the knockout of the year against Francis Ngannou, considering how big that fight was. But
And
that wasn't like a
violent.
surprise here. You know what I mean? That wasn't a big surprise. The stakes, obviously, there were stakes attached to it. But we weren't sure how long Francis was going to do the boxing thing for. This is just kind of a showcase thing. Let's try to build upon the Tyson Fury fight, whatever that was. But man, this was just so clean, man. And considering what was on the line, it just doesn't get better than that, BC. It just doesn't.
One
So
punch
nice.
and to see the body fall and then the head bounce, which obviously we're hoping is okay, was hospitalized afterwards. That's a big time moment for Angelo Leo. So shout out there. Hey, big night for box. You know, I love it. I got to get fired up when my sport delivers. Okay. Well, I mean, it was Speedback weekend. But
Sorry to interrupt. You want to know the thing that
Please.
stood out to me the most about that knockout? Why the referee counted to 10? That
Yeah,
dude is
Chris
done.
Algieri went off
What are we
on that.
doing?
yeah, that was a little bit unnecessary. I think
Here.
it was because he was looking at the eyes and they were still open at least, but they were not there, obviously. I mean, he
No.
was trying his best to fight through that. That was interesting. I like Chris Algieri, by the way, filling in for Tim Bradley there. I think he's one of the better guys in this game, so it's good to see him paired with Joe Tess. Great to be partnered here with Mike Heck today. But speaking of great partnerships, Morning Combat has got a few of them. How about DraftKings and DraftKings Casino specifically? In a world of slot reels and blackjack deals comes the must-play event of the summer from DraftKings Casino. Get ready for this. Featuring nonstop action and an all-star cast of games. Yeah, I'm talking about A-lister Loki's Luck. This summer blockbuster is the one you won't want to miss. Plus, new players right now can get $100 instantly in casino credits with just a $1 wager. And all players get a blockbuster bonus every single week. So sign up with our code COMBAT with a K right now and grab your popcorn. It's showtime, on DraftKings Casino. And remember one thing about DraftKings. Like Luke Thomas, typically 5 minutes before the show airs, the crown is yours. Much different crowning is really where we're going with this. All right, shout out there. Mike, let's head into here. Topic number 2. Let's talk Turkey on Turkey. Yeah, I'm talking about Turki Alalshikh, boxing Santa Claus. It's been an interesting week for him. To be very fair, it's been an interesting turn of events ever since his first card Riyadh season in the U.S. last week, August 3rd, Los Angeles, when Terrence Crawford wins the close decision over Madrimov. We've got an Eminem concert. But we also had, for the first time, really some weird propaganda thrown in. Saudi Arabian national anthem with no fighters there. Turkey getting inducted into the Nevada Boxing Hall of Fame on Californian soil for no reason. And a lot of worship, bow down. Look, Turki Alalshikh is doing big things right now. Big things this sport needs in a lot of ways. But Mike Heck, tell me if I'm crazy here. We're going to get into this Canelo beef in a second, but straight up, tell me if I'm crazy. Brent Brookhouse of CBS Sports brought this up to me, my colleague, basically saying, I wonder if we look back at that Hall of Fame induction that happened that night and the Saudi Arabian trip giveaways and all that as maybe a turning point. Is the honeymoon on Turki Alalshikh starting to come over? Are we starting to see him turn heel? Are we seeing a new side of him? I feel like my timeline and my feels around me in the boxing game, I'm starting to get some people saying, wait, hold up. Am I crazy here?
Turkey is what Don Davis wishes he was, where he has the clout but could say whatever he wants and it'll have actual impact on things, where Don Davis just says things and we don't believe a word of what he says, because why should we? Everything he said has not really come true to this point. And there's a topic that we're going to touch on later on with some fights that have been made where we're finally like, oh, maybe Don is actually doing the thing here. But yeah, man, it's just been a weird time where one guy has basically just pieces of all the other promoters that have made hay over the last several years, from the Don Kings to the Dana Whites. He's got pieces of all of those guys where he's got the Dana. He's not afraid to clap back. Although Dana likes to go on his friends' podcasts and clap back, Turkey would just jump on Twitter and blast you. He just does not care. It's pretty impressive.
Doesn't he have like a Trumpian tone to his, like, the way that he fields insults and fires back?
He's just there. I just don't understand this. At first, I was just like, this dude's just shelling out money and money talks that can make things happen. But now he's found himself kind of becoming a draw himself, where he's become the personality. He's trying to become sort of the A side, the star himself. Yeah. It's crazy.
So he put out a picture today, by the way, of him and Shakur Stevenson, who seems to be, like we talked about, the Zepeda fight, one of his next big signees or favorite fighters that he focuses. And I think he ended the blurb on Instagram with, like, now in the comments, tell me why I'm bad for boxing. So the reason why I bring up this topic and make it a topic really spawned off of the war of words with Canelo. But I do think it goes deeper. Since that weird moment in LA, it does feel like Turkey's peacocking a little bit more, clapping back on Thursdays or all days a little bit more. Let's talk about this Canelo thing. So he got into a war of words that began last Monday, right? Canelo began a 2-day press conference tour with Edgar Berlanga ahead of their September 14th fight, obviously going up against the Sphere in UFC card in Las Vegas. Let's throw Long Island Luke to the initial. This is an interview that Canelo did after the press conference where he was told about Turki Alalshikh saying, hey, if you go head to head September 14th, we're going to crush you. Let's hear Canelo's reaction.
Find some of his comments almost disrespectful when he was talking about eat you alive head to head on Mexican Independence Day. And if you're smart, you'll take the deal.
I respect everybody. I respect everybody, but I don't like that way he talks. But it's his problem, not my problem. And I don't ask for a fight with him, and I don't ask for any fight. So I respect, like I say. If he wants a fight me with other guys, he need to do it my way, not in his way.
After your last fight.
Let's address that part first and foremost. You could slant this war, and we got a clap back from Turkey coming here, we're going to show, as about, is Canelo ducking the Benavidez and or Crawford fights? And we've talked about that a lot on this show, and that's in play in this argument. But Mike, what do you feel about the back end of that? So specifically, does Canelo, the cash cow in boxing, the guy who clearly is calling his own shots to a stubborn level where he's like, you guys all want this. I don't even want this right now, so I'm going to do what I want, whether you respect it or not, whether you think he's earned it, a chance to do that or not. He's basically saying, like, no, not on your terms, not the way you've been talking to others. In fact, Canelo was quoted a couple times saying, I don't like the way you talk to fighters. Is there something there? Is Canelo right? Should you have to respect him, come to him, and play on Canelo's rules? Or is boxing Santa Claus already in a year and a half established that you're either with me or you're against me?
It's probably like a little of column A and a little of column B. Canelo is such a brand, especially around that time of year, that he could fight anybody and it's going to be a big deal. And it can be up against anything else that's 10 miles down the road, and it's still going to be a very big deal. Canelo can fight Berlanga, and it's still going to sell out T-Mobile. It's going to do fine on pay-per-view. Like, Canelo is he's a star. He's a massive draw, especially in Las Vegas, especially that time of year. So yeah, there aren't a lot of people in Canelo's position who can actually say the things he's saying. And you can say, you know what? He's probably right. But Canelo is that guy. Like, he is in that position where he doesn't need to fight any of these other guys, and people will complain along the way because that's what combat sports fans do. And that's what pundits do. And you should, but at the same token, it's not slowing down his bottom line. It's not like he's not going to make tens of millions of dollars for an easier fight in a sold out arena in Las Vegas, whether the Sphere is happening or not. So yeah, he's one of the rare people in this sport right now that can go up against Turkey, may not get the blockbuster fights that Turkey is presenting or that boxing fans want to see. But by the time September 14th rolls around, no one's going to care, BC, because Canelo's fighting on Mexican Independence Day. He's probably going to melt this guy, and people are going to be talking about it. That's just how it works.
I do think there is something to what Canelo's saying about, like, show me the respect. Because look, I agree. From when he arrived, what Turki Alalshikh, despite the controversy of what he brought with him, which is the Saudi Arabian element, the fact that they're not here first and foremost to improve boxing or to change boxing or fix boxing. They're here to carry out their agenda. And that agenda can be as extreme if you think it's just straight sports washing and we're all just falling victim to it, despite, crimes of that country and And we've debated that a million times. We know what I'm talking about here. I think to some degree, especially as hardcore boxing fans like myself, we've been very willing to say, okay, we'll accept that other side and just hope that it ends up all right for what you're giving us, which is dream fights in some degree that can only be made if your checkbook is willing to do it. It's not just the checkbook, it's the commercials, it's the infrastructure. I mean, he's making it feel big and grand. Turkey's succeeding in that level. But even though the fighters are getting paid very well, which is why I think we've even been willing as a boxing media to almost not bring up the Monopoly Muhammad Ali Act violation side of it either. To be very fair, it's almost as if we're acting like that's not even part of the equation, or the fact that in MMA, we're constantly railing and filling these podcasts against the UFC for their monopolistic control. And they're not, is the difference that they're not paying the fighters the same and that at least the boxers are getting paid? Maybe. But I don't love the way that Turkey talks to or about the fighters. Yes, it's built up in, I want to make you the legend, get the exposure and coverage that you deserve. It's not in every person. I think with Crawford, he's going to end up doing great things for Crawford in that level. But man, this guy's quick to clap back. Let's show now the response to Canelo. And I think this is the first time he really got very aggressive, saying, I heard what Canelo said, that he respects me, but doesn't like the way we do business. As for him respecting me, it doesn't matter to me if he does or not. He would go on to really say, and I know how he feels after losing to Bivol, so he's been looking for easier fights since. Also, I'm not the one who's afraid of fighting Benavidez or Crawford. And he would go on to continue, as you can read there, dunking on Canelo on the way out. So, Mike, this was heavy-handed. I definitely saw a split reaction in the boxing game. A lot of people going, man, finally, some of these promoters getting balls and telling it like it is for real against Canelo for ducking. And I've been on the Canelo ducking train. It pisses me off. I feel like it's potentially going to negatively change the respect in the way we look at him historically if he follows through with it all the way. But this is very aggressive here from Turkey. I think Canelo's onto something, that like you're making it like you're either with me or you're out of the game and you're an idiot, because that's kind of what he's saying. He's saying the same thing about Zoo right now. Like, oh, these guys just don't get it. If they're smart, they'll come with me. But I think he's also been throwing around little threats. He did it a bunch of times on the Ariel interview of like, even if you aren't with me, whether you're a promoter or a network or a sanctioning body, we're going to do this anyway. So, Mike, how do you respond after seeing that from Turkey? Because now it's like, I'm going to almost get Dana White-like and slap this guy on the way out.
Yeah, I think he spent, that's basically what I thought about it, was he spent a lot of time with Dana White in Saudi Arabia, and, he's learned from him. They formed some sort of a kinship and a partnership. And it's very rare that you see somebody sort of not have Dana backpedaling, but at least to some degree, because you remember if you were watching that Saudi Arabia card, at the end of it, before they did the post-fight show, John Anik is doing an interview with both Dana and Turkey. And John asked Dana a question and Dana answers it the way that he wants. Like, yeah, we're going to come back and we're going to do some stuff. And then they would bring the mic to Turkey. He's like, yeah, and we're going to do a pay-per-view and you're going to give us this and you're going to give us that. And you could see the look on Dana's face. Like, what the hell is going on here? What is this guy doing? And it just kept happening. Like every topic they brought up, Dana would say something very positive about Turkey and Saudi Arabia, and Turkey would be like, yeah, you guys are great, but we're going to do this. And by all accounts, when the UFC was going to go to Saudi Arabia in March, Turkey was like, hell no, you're not bringing us this card. Come back with something better, and then we'll talk again, because we're paying you a bunch of money, and this card needs to be worth the millions of dollars that we are giving you right now. Dana ain't used to that. And I also don't think, I think just from a human element standpoint, I don't think Turkey's used to anybody saying no to him or clapping back at him.
No,
Clearly
but
not.
Here's where I
and
said,
this is just him being stubborn as hell.
So when he ripped Canelo and then they went back and forth a little bit more, I said half of the people were like, yeah, great, someone's finally bringing it to Canelo. But the other half, I think, are taking into totality of what has gone on in the last 2 weeks, where Turkey's feeling himself more, being more aggressive, that it's getting too heavy-handed. Meaning, look, he talked down to Oscar on air, basically saying, if you read through the lines, I control you now. You will do what I say. That's what it sounded like, okay? That's what seems to be doing. Only Frank Warren and Eddie Hearn seem to be, like, willing. Bob Arum to some degree, too. Like, we understand that to get to this level and to make these fights, you're not having Usyk Fury 1 and 2 or Bivol better be without him. You're just not in this modern climate. So there's that great element. But he's taking a lot. And I think we were willing to easily give away, all right, it's sports washing, but again, we're getting the greatest fights. You can have that part of it. Is all of boxing going to be willing to give away more? Meaning, I think he's pretty soon on this genius plan. I don't think he has to pull off that Reuters story that came out a couple months ago where you buy every promotion. I don't think it would work, and I don't even think he needs it. He's getting the influence from the inside out. You can see that by putting that huge sponsorship money on these cards. He's now kind of owning the final stamp, right? He's the last boss in the video game, it seems, and he's calling the shots. So is boxing ready for that? Will that work in MMA? I think there's a lot of questions to be still talked about, because here's one thing I will say from a purist of boxing, Mike. He kind of speaks like a casual at times. And I think it's dangerous with the control he has, because he wants to throw out fights that, like, it's like dream fights. And what's the biggest problem in boxing? We don't always get the fights we deserve and want and dream about. Yes. So this is kind of a weird extended holiday where it's like, we don't know what to do with it. Should we still complain? I don't know. But even though it's going great, I don't know if I want to give away this car crash matchmaking style consistently like this, where just because he wants it, he's going to get it. I don't think it's made a lot of sense. You could argue, and I think some people did. Eric Raskin wrote a great column in Boxing Scene about it. Like Big Baby Anderson, Top Rank, they know what they're doing in matchmaking. He's probably not going to step up that quickly in reality if Turkey doesn't say, I identify you, I like you, you will change your trainers now that I've asked you, and you will fight this tough fight against Martin Bakole. It just so happened that the Theater of Boxing, it was an upset and it was a great moment, and we'll see if Big Baby can bounce back. But I wonder if he's potentially has a chance to shake up boxing, which we hope he does in entertaining ways, where the control goes too much. He speaks like a casual fan. I think he's disrespectful at times to the fighters. I think he's starting to show you that he's ready to walk over everyone because he's signing a check at the end of the day. And now you have to ask yourself, the money's great, but this isn't his personal wealth. He's an appointee of this nation that does have a somewhat questionable history that we're trying to deal with. What's the limit on the control that the industry can allow, Mike? Are we getting to a point where we're seeing negative things in the future, or are we just filling podcast airtime and the proof will be in the pudding? Where are you on that level? Because this isn't just boxing now. This is going to be the sphere. This is going to be a continued relationship on the UFC side.
Yeah, he's got an MMA promoter mentality in a long growing boxing world, and the boxing world just isn't used to this. My biggest question of all of this is this like attitude era booking? And I know people who watch our programming, when I compare MMA to pro wrestling or compare combat sports to pro wrestling, they get all mad at me. But attitude era was the biggest time in the history of the business. We got all the big matches. The ratings were back. WCW was kicking WWE's ass. And then WWE finally came back, and then they put WCW out of business. But the fear of longtime fans was, is this sustainable over a long period of time? And as it turned out, it wasn't. And to some degree, it took 25 years for the business of pro wrestling to recover from the crash TV, we need this right now booking that they did. And I feel like with Turkey coming in, there's similar vibes to it, where how long is this sustainable for? And on top of that, are people willing to accept this for such a long period of time? Yeah, we're going to get the big fights, but if a Canelo starts clapping back at Turkey, what happens if Bud Crawford starts clapping back? What happens if Fury or Usyk? What are you going to do?
It's like, if you're out, are you going to form, is there going to be like a WCW that rises up? Because it feels like the big PBC stars are telling him, I don't need you. Is that going to be where like the people that don't want to work with him, kind of like when Vince McMahon went national in 1984, right? Suddenly the other promoters are trying to scurry together and make something happen. Is it going to be that? I don't know. It's certainly exciting. It's interesting. Boxing never fails to give us weird things to talk about in this regard. I think there's a comical level to Turkey's character in a fun way. I'm not making fun of him. I mean, like, you know, he comes out there casually and just calls the shots, walks right into the locker room, says, we're going to do my plan. Yes. Okay, good. It's kind of interesting. But what I don't like is we know too much about his plans, meaning it's disrespectful to the B side of all these huge fights that he's almost walking over them and saying, when this guy wins, he will fight this next. And it's like, it's great. I want that fight too. But then when we see these upsets, like they brought in Wilder for big fights to try to get him to the Joshua fight, and that was a train wreck. Was Wilder even ready to come back? Was he lured by money? That's obviously his decision, but we're just throwing things at the wall aggressively that like a little bit more care and nuance to the experts who have built their reputation for multiple decades promoting and game planning exactly like this. I don't know if you can co-pilot the ship with him. That's really what I'm trying to say here, Mike, and it's going to be interesting to see. Will there be defectors, or will this become a thing, or are we just all going to shut up and keep getting great fights? I don't know. Mike.
Yeah, five years from now, I'm real interested to see what this all looks like in both sports.
Sure.
Really am.
Well, as long as this show doesn't can we show that DAZN lower third? I want to respect the guy. All right, I'll call him by his title, which is what, the head of the General Entertainment Authority or whatever it is. But even on DAZN, they're like, no, he is His Excellency. Mike, I feel like there is a line in combat sports, and we're separating the group here. You're either willing to call him His Excellency on the air, or you're willing to not. I'm in the not necessary, don't want to go down that road. A lot of people are on the other side of that line, though. I mean, I don't know if that's job security related, but God, it's a lower third on the screen. What are we doing here?
I mean, I wish I could say I'm surprised by this, BC, but I'm just not. I'm just not. Yeah, this is what we've become. This is what we've become. It's basically like, look at all the celebrities we have here, but let's show Donald Trump on the screen for the 47th consecutive time. It's just what it is.
It is a similar level of aggressive propaganda. Okay, let me ask you, if the Sphere happens, let's say they continue this Canelo-Turkey feud, because they're going to be going head to head in a lot of ways. If there's a Saudi Arabian national anthem at the Sphere for that pro-Mexican Independence Day card, like, am I making up shit that doesn't need to be talked about? Because it didn't seem like people were upset in the arena that the Saudi Arabian national anthem played. Like, respect to that nation. But what are we doing here? That's aggressive.
Yeah, it's a little aggressive, BC. It's a little aggressive. And on top of that, I think a lot of the people who have a problem with Sean O'Malley, Merab Dvalishvili headlining this card on Mexican Independence Day, when the rest of the fighters include some sort of fighter from Mexico, I mean, those people are going to be pissed. They're going to be real mad, BC. So yeah, that whole event, I have so many questions about, and it's one of those things where I'll have all these questions, but I won't get any answers until September 14th. It's going to be crazy. I'm very intrigued to see how they pull it off, especially if this truly is a one and done.
All right. If anyone wondering if I just turned heel against Turkey, no, officially I haven't. I'm watching. I'm an observer with an opinion. I hope this works out. I hope he makes the big fights. But Turkey, I did see that post you put up in another language that I had to hit translate on. First of all, I saw this one where he says he's the most influential figure in boxing and MMA. I mean, he's supporting that title there, Mike. So we know what he believes his role is right now in this, even though it seems to be more about changing the image of the nation. He's already grabbed the steering wheel on both sports in his mind, and I've got it. But dude, he went on a trash talking rant against American restaurants, service, hotels. He said people in our nation know that we can't wear a watch on American soil or it'll be stolen. I'm not holding a grudge here, but have you ever been to a Sheetz or a Cumberland Farms Turkey? You'd be blown away, dude. They got him the rollers there. Like, it's incredible. I mean, where did he eat, Mike? What do you think about that post? Damn, that got me fired up. Turkey, maybe he went to D.C. I don't know. Have you ever been to D.C., Mike? The service people there are so angry, just so angry. I could have bad comedy. I don't know what the equation is. Maybe Turkey got a hold of that. But I
mean, this dude just don't care. No one's safe, BC. No one's safe.
No one's safe.
The restaurant industry, the tourism industry, the boxing industry, the mixed martial arts industry. Nobody's safe from this man's wrath, BC. Nobody.
All right. We got a couple more items, Mike. I really appreciate you being here and your time. This is fun. Let's go to topic number 4 and or topic number 3, and let's switch over to the UFC. We did have an Apex card on Saturday. It happened. I watched it. It just matters if anyone else did, and if they didn't, did it actually exist? It was Sergey Spivak, by the way, avenging his 2020 loss to Marcin Tybura. Amid rumors, by the way, that the UFC Apex, we know it's going to go under a $25 million renovation. Dana White has said that in multiple interviews. But the rumors are, by the way, that this could close in November and not reopen until July of 2025, which I think maybe could change the face of what we expect or get of late from these fight nights. First and foremost, Mike, I complain on this show a lot and get called out for it. But was this on paper the worst fight night card in this era of really bad Apex fight night cards that fill your podcast and mine with my voice yelling about it? Is this the worst? Is this as bad as it gets?
This was the worst. This is the worst on paper, and it was the worst in execution. And when I say this, I don't want this to sound like I'm digging at the fighters or trashing the fighters. I'm just a man who will watch fights and will enjoy them as a fan. But come on, man, like, give us some stakes. You're the freaking UFC. This isn't just some come from behind organization. This isn't a regional promotion. This is the tip of the top. This is like giving us Monday Night Football, but it's like the last place teams on in every single week. Nobody wants that. We want to see the Patriots with Tom Brady as the quarterback playing Peyton Manning and the Colts. Give us that once in a while. This was just so bad. And even the things that were bright about it, like the 5 p.m. start time and just 10 fights, which by the way, 10 fights should be the number for all these Apex cards. When it was all said and done, I felt like I watched fights for 14 hours. I felt like this is Bellator Dublin. This is 19, 20, 21 fights, because the pacing of this card was atrocious. It was so bad. All of these went to decisions. And then we had to do a promotional package about this. And then we had to learn about how Sergey Spivak met his wife and now they're having a family, which is all great stories, but I don't need to see this. I'm ready for the next fight to start. It made me miss when the UFC did fight night cards on Fight Pass. Those were the best because we get 15 fights. There were no commercial breaks. And I understand they work with ESPN. You got to throw some commercial breaks out. I don't need to see Wonder Boy and Kevin Holland fighting and then taking shots of tequila with ice packs on their face 800 times.
Yeah, but it's Burger King hot and fiery season, Mike. Okay, all right. You can
this. It's so brutal. It's just so brutal. Like, and they don't care. They don't care. I got to tell you, I've been working for MMA Fighting for a little over 4 years now. This was the card that had the least amount of interest that I have ever seen. Like, by far. Usually you get something, but
Jessica
nothing with
Calvillo used to be a measuring stick. This is a new level. It is. And we've had a few of these conversations this calendar year, but I actually watched the whole card. You know, I may have been sitting in row 8 there. I mean, it kind of helps your motivation to keep watching with the record player going. But, I mean, it wasn't awful. But this just wasn't Major League. It is what it is, okay? They don't care. They don't care. That's where we're at. Mike, will it change based upon the fact, we can show some pictures here that I think Ken Hathaway of MMA Junkie took, that the construction seems to have begun here. I can't confirm that the rumor is true on the closing in November, reopening next summer, but this will mean they're going back on the road full time. Will that make it feel bigger, even if the cards aren't great, just with the crowd element there? Are you expecting that we're no longer going to be talking about this week to week anymore? Or is it still dependent on giving us something to watch atop the marquee?
BC, not that long ago, in front of what became the biggest fight night audience in U.S. history, the biggest gate ever for a fight night in the UFC's history, we got Derek Lewis, who I love, versus Rodrigo Nascimento as a main event. And they sold all the tickets for it. It does not matter. They can literally throw shit at the wall and people be like, oh, it's $2,000. Sure. I'll go watch the shit stick to the wall. It's going to be great because there's fights and they haven't come to our town in so long. It's just wild how big their business is right now. And they can do literally anything. I haven't heard much about the Apex shutting down either. But I joked about this, and I honestly think there might be some truth to it. And I don't know. I don't have any actual insight. I could see a world where the UFC just like puts cones and yellow tape around the octagon. Like, oh no, we're not going to leave the Apex. Like we'll still just do construction in the back here. But
dude, that would be so awesome. Paul Anka's still sitting in the VIP lounge. He has no idea why he's there. This is great. You know, wow.
Yeah, I mean, those production costs.
I don't think the matchmaking is going to change, but I think you're right. I think it's going to that crowd is going to make the broadcast better. I mean, Long Island Luke, people like you with degenerative gambling podcasts with taking bong rips are going to watch anything. You told me that many times.
Yeah, and I watched this card this weekend too. And Mike's right. It was absolutely terrible, but I'm going to watch it regardless.
All right. So I'm not going to ask you if Sergey Spivak, now winning 4 or 5 at age 29, all 4 by stoppages and avenging that loss to Tybura from 4 years ago. 5 years ago. Who cares? Is he now a viable heavyweight contender? I mean, at least he didn't make us wait around. He got that sub 1. It was a nice armbar or whatever. I mean, what was it? It was a submission, Mike. I forgot at this point.
Yeah, it was nasty. It was nasty. He was the hero that we need. Look at that. I mean, we needed this so badly. And about a minute into the fight, when Spivak got a takedown and had Tybura's back, and then Tybura shook him off and was in his full guard and landing those Tybura type lunch boxes, I'm like, oh, Jesus Christ, man, this is the next 30 minutes of my life. And then Spivak was like, no, don't worry, Mike. Don't worry, MMA community. I know you want to get out of here. Watch this. And then boom, he did it. I like Spivak, man. 29 years of age. The guy's got something. I think he could be a viable threat in this division. The problem is he's already fought Tom Aspinall. He's already fought Cyril Gane and got dusted by both of them. So getting him to a belt, as long as either of those guys are in play, because John Jones and Stipe certainly aren't going to fight this man. I think his road to a title is just going to take forever right now because he's already fought the dudes he's going to have to beat to get there. So, but he's good, man. You could tell he's evolved. He's pretty good, but he's just, man, it's going to take forever. He's the Bilal Muhammad of the heavyweight division.
Well, we don't have time to play the clip, but I did want to remind you that Dana White told Kevin Iole that Tom Aspinall doesn't deserve to fight for the full heavyweight title right now. But after Jones Stipe, he definitely deserves to fight for it. So, okay.
They owe it to him, BC. They owe it to him.
I got a couple quick hits for you on the way out before we bring in Luke Thomas and set that stage for UFC 305 this Saturday. Topic number 4, get fired up. Francis Ngannou is finally going to return to MMA. It'll come in October after 33 months away, but even bigger of a story, despite him coming off, right? That disastrous knockout loss in the boxing ring to Anthony Joshua. PFL finally gets their Francis pay-per-view. So, Mike, it's going to be against Renan Ferreira, their biggest by size and certainly by danger heavyweight on their roster. But it's that co-main that really bumps it up. It's going to go down October 19th. I don't know about the location yet. Chris Cyborg finally will make her PFL Tour debut here against Larissa Pacheco. Hell yeah. Mike, I got to ask you about what our excitement level should be for this. And I want to ask you, based on what Francis went through, the Fury fight and the Ngannou fight, which extended that window before he's going to finally make this delay. Like, that changed a lot in terms of his age, his damage, what we thought about him. Does all of that make this fight now more exciting and more must-see, or less because it's taken so long? How do you judge that? Does it even matter?
I mean, personally, it makes it more intriguing for me because, I mean, this wasn't just a loss to Anthony Joshua. He got real bad. Like, one of the scariest knockouts I've ever seen in boxing or in any combat sport. It was just bad. I was like, this guy might not even fight again. That's how bad and how scary that knockout was. So I am intrigued because Ferreira is a big, giant man who hits really, really hard. And doesn't matter who you are, if you're Francis Ngannou or anybody else, if that man clips you, there's a very good chance you go to sleep. And one thing that we've always learned about Francis is that he's so durable, you can't hurt him. Well, we saw him get hurt. We saw that seal get broken a little bit. And if a guy like Renan Ferreira in 4-ounce gloves hits Francis like that, it could be a wrap. And that, BC, would be an absolute disaster for the PFL. If that night ends with Renan Ferreira knocking out Francis Ngannou in the first round, that is disastrous. It could not get any worse.
Well, you get a rematch. You get another pay-per-view out of it. You get a big rematch.
Oh, but then, like, the excitement levels are gone. Like, that can't even be a pay-per-view anymore. Like, we just feel bad for him. We'll be like, no, Francis, don't do this anymore. Head up PFL Africa. We're good. I've always wanted to see Francis, and I'm with Jed and I are on the same page with this stuff. Just throw Francis anybody. Like, just give him a body to wreck. Like, that's his appeal, right?
He should have been, in some ways, he should have been fighting every 3.5 months, just getting quick first-round knockouts just to keep hitting the cash register and getting it going. I don't say anything negative against Francis from the standpoint of getting the bags, that when they were available in boxing, and they were readily available at major sizes. So again, shout out to him. And I know he was very ambitious, and we didn't know what to expect entering that Joshua fight. Is he a real player and a contender? Well, now I'm glad that he's coming back, just because I think he owes it to PFL, right? Before he turns 40 here to get or before he's done, to get a big fight here. I think I want this matchup more, though, now because of that delay. Actually, because of the knockout. I do. There's more questions now. 33 months since he last fought MMA. Fajeda's big and can knock you out. I think this is entertainment level-wise. It's not been great for PFL that they had to wait so long, but our interest level, our entertainment, this has leveled the playing field. And I think when Francis first got there was no opponent we could create or think of outside of maybe Derek Lewis for one night, but he ended up taking the security of the UFC contract that could have gotten us excited. I think the questions now make this more exciting. Real quick, Mike, Chris Cyborg Pacheco in the co-main, which is a great fight. Is that the best fight you can make in all of women's MMA of active fighters?
Probably.
Give it to me. Give it to me here. Probably. Come on.
I mean, Harrison Cyborg is probably the bigger one. That one I really wanted, and we didn't end up getting it, but this is like a good second place. And I know Amanda Nunes technically isn't quote unquote active, but I still feel like a Kayla Harrison Amanda Nunes fight is very real and very much on the table. So, I mean, it's up to Kayla. She's got to beat Ketlin Vieira in good old Salt Lake City and probably win the belt in order for that to happen to lure Amanda back. But yeah, right now with what is currently available and what is there, this is a good fight. I just hope, when I first saw this booking, we knew it was coming. My first thought was like, man, I just hope this isn't like 2 years too late to make this fight.
Yeah.
Because Pacheco's a demon. She's so good. She is really, really good.
And she just won the championship. She won the tournament again this past year.
Yeah, and Chris is one of the best of all time. There's no doubt about it, but she hasn't fought the competition that Larissa's fought. Like, I know PFL isn't just stacked with talented 145ers, but neither is Bellator. At least Larissa's fought Kayla. She's got a win there. So I'm very much intrigued by that fight because I think Larissa could be the one to shut her down. We haven't seen Chris in like a fight that we really questioned whether or not she could win since the Nunes fight. And even then we're like, oh, this is too much too soon.
That's
so
a great point.
Yeah,
and
this is the most intriguing Chris Cyborg fight in years.
And I'm not saying Pacheco has the commercial potential to be even bigger than she is now, but the critical acceptance, what have you done in your career? If she goes from beating Kayla Harrison, although she lost to her twice on the road to getting there, to say she knocks out Cyborg, damn. Put that resume. Dude. I mean, that's the best you can do in these weight classes. That's it right there. That's pretty awesome. I wonder if UFC
might call her back.
Would be calling.
UFC might call her back. Yeah,
right on board with you. All right, Luke Thomas is going to come in here in a second, Mike, and we are going to set the stage, which I'm sure you're going to do all week on your MMA fighting platforms there on Vox, and you do great work for UFC 305 Saturday, Australia, and of course DDP Adesanya in the main event for the middleweights. Such a great main event, Mike. Could be anywhere on the card. I want your biggest or your most intriguing storyline that you are watching for. Let our fans know what MMA Fighting's Mike Heck is watching for entering Saturday night.
I mean, the main event's so good, man. It's just so good. I have a million questions about Israel Adesanya. Very curious to see how he looks. Obviously, he looks tremendous. He looks like he's put on some muscle, a little bit svelte, looking pretty good. And DDP's out getting cattle prodded before a fight. So I wonder how much that is going to play.
Is that from the school of Josh Fabia right there? I mean, what is that? Wow.
Incredible stuff. So yes, is cattle prod gate a thing is my biggest storyline. And of course, Dan Hooker's getting a big opportunity right now. Mateusz Gamrot should have fought for the lightweight title in a real meritocratic world after Charles Oliveira was hurt. They brought in Volkanovski. They had an actual backup fighter. This dude just keeps going out and getting wins, and now he's going to keep fighting behind him. But if Dan Hooker could come in to Perth and beat Mateusz Gamrot, he's a top 5 lightweight. And this is insane to think about. So huge opportunity for Dan Hooker. I think he has the most to gain on the entire card. And there's so much on the line in this main event. It's not the greatest pay-per-view lineup. Very top heavy. Main card's fun, but the main event absolutely rules.
Well done. Well said. That's MMA Fighting's Mike Heck right there. Mike, for a MK debut, I think you just hit it over the fence, and I appreciate your time, your passion. We can see you, I believe, on Thursdays beneath the links there on YouTube there on the MMA Fighting channel.
Yeah, between the links, live from New Hampshire, my home state. We can get after it. So yeah, Thursday, 12:30 p.m. Eastern time. Join us for BTL. It'll be a good time. I'm sure Jed will be there. We'll bring on some sort of opponent for him to be all rambunctious with. And BC, I know you won't be around. I was going to take this opportunity to put you on the spot, but we've already had this conversation. But as soon as you can come back, we would love to have you back on BTL.
Thank you. That show, you guys allow me to just go balls bonanza and just, absolutely bring it. And I really appreciate that. And it's a lot of fun. And I think you do a great job. Mike Heck, everybody, thank you so much for joining us. I'm sure our fans will be watching your content the rest of the week. A great partner here this week. Camera back on me. Let the gentleman go. Thank you very much. Love Mike Heck right there. Great partner. As I said, we talked about DraftKings earlier, but I got another partner for you guys. Okay. You ever hear a really catchy song you can't get out of your head? It yeah, that song was really good, right? You just got to tell a friend, that viral TV show that's blowing up for you. But how about if I shared this with you, that you can experience just how awesome something is I found? It's kind of like what it feels like when you discover Mint Mobile. When you discover how Mint Mobile offers premium wireless for just $15 a month when you purchase a 3-month plan. It's such an awesome deal, folks, that there's no way you can keep it to yourself. So this is just a friend telling another friend about a great deal. Mint Mobile is here to rescue you and your squad with premium wireless plans starting at just $15 a month. Use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your own phone number with you along with your existing contacts. And all plans come with high-speed data, unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You don't want to pay for other overpriced plans. How about pay for this one with the highest quality for $15 a month? To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15, Go to mintmobile.com/combat with a K. That's mintmobile.com/combat. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/combat with a K. And a $45 upfront payment is required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower, above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. Thank you very much. Before we bring on Luquito and update his vacation, and boy, his excitement level for Saturday's Adesanya return. When we're talking about partners, how about everything going on at All the Smoke fight right now? Andre Ward is on board, as we know. And his sit-down interview that we saw with Terrence Crawford ahead of that August 3rd card was fantastic. He's got another one coming with Shakur Stevenson, the unbeaten fighter who just posed with Turki Alalshikh today and seems to be headed to some very big things. But if we remember correctly, after Shakur's last performance, there was a storm of negativity coming his way, calling him boring, calling him a lot of things. And he clapped back. It wasn't just on Thursdays, Oscar. It was all the time, all night long, to whoever was in his way. One of those was Andre Berto, friends of Andre Ward, the former welterweight champion. Here's Andre Ward talking to Shakur Stevenson about that beef, how it started, and why it's here. There's a little snippet of what you can find on All the Smoke Boxing and All the Smoke Fight.
You had a little situation, man, with one of my brothers in the game, right? Andre Berto. And we talked about it yesterday on camera. And his explanation is, man, I was just trying to reach out to the youngster, man, encourage him, and put it out there. My response was, bro, I think you probably should have slid that in the DM and just did it personally. Why did you respond the way that you did to Andre Berto?
After my fight, it was a lot of people, you know, with so many different things to say. And I felt as though with Berto, he jumped into the crowd. And if he was trying to get a message to me and him talking the DM several times. We talked in so many different situations in the DM. So if he was really trying to get a message to me, he could have just DM'd me and we could have had a conversation, what you just said. But he jumped into a crowd where everybody else, boom, shot here, shot here, shot here. Everybody's throwing their shots. And I didn't feel that. I didn't feel like that was the right way to go about it, especially if you want to be looked to me as an OG or a person that I can't respect that.
You still stand by how you responded?
Yeah.
Yeah?
I ain't gonna lie. Yeah. I mean, I may have went far, but like everybody going, I mean, at this point, come on. If it's me against the world, I'm not scared to go against the world. I'm not gonna back down, oh, is this person, is it? Nah. If y'all saying forget me, I'm gonna say forget you too. And have it go. I'll be a one-man army. Come on.
We also talked about this after talking about the situation y'all had. I said, the younger generation feel like the older generation be hating. The older generation feel like the younger generation don't listen. I think there's some truth in both of those statements. How do you feel about it?
I don't think the older generation be hating. Well, from my point of view, and I'm not saying, cause I barely, like, I ain't gonna lie, I ain't include him into like, the other older generation kind of like, they've been like showing love. Like how you or Roy, y'all give criticism, but y'all show love at the same time. I didn't think that with him. Like it didn't seem like he was more so giving like a good, message to put out there. Positive message. It was more so like a negative message to me, so.
But I'm saying, just say your peers, people that's your age, a little younger, a little older. Can we say something to y'all or it gotta be packed? Because again, we looking at it, I don't fully feel like that. I feel like I try not to offer no advice unless I feel like it's either asked or I feel like I should probably say something. I don't just come giving advice. How does the older generation connect with the younger generation? Like, what do y'all need from us?
I think y'all doing it the right way for as far as I know. The people that reached out to me, like the Zab Judas or the Paulie Malinagis, they not going on social media with it. They, such and such, you feel me? So I think y'all doing it the right way. I take it better from when somebody reach out to me personally. Like I'm gonna take it way better. So all of the OGs should just know how to do that instead of, jumping in the crowd.
Well, I told him, I ain't saying y'all gotta be partners or friends and nothing like that. But I need y'all to, I need to bring y'all together, man, for my sake, bro. I don't need no problem. I don't want no problem. I told Bertos, look, man, y'all gonna have to figure this out, man. So hopefully we can do that, bro.
And you can watch that interview in full, Shakur Stevenson with Andre Ward, later this week. Check out the All the Smoke Fight and the All the Smoke Boxing YouTube and social media channels. Our fine friends over there. Good stuff, good content. Hey, let's get right to it. Luke Thomas is still on vacation in South America, but you know he's fired up for 305 this Saturday, Australia. You just heard Mike Heck sprinkle a little dust on top. Let's get the full package here from the man who does, yes, body for days. Let's look at him. Let's see him. Let's smell him. Oh, he looks fit and gray and happy. Luke Thomas, how are you, bro? I miss you. I do. I missed you. I can't lie.
Yeah, vacation's almost over. I come back tomorrow. Today's my last full day here, and it's been great. It's been a lot. We've done a lot of stuff, but I kind of needed it, and it's been pretty wonderful, if I could be honest with you. So, yeah, man.
Yeah, thank you for being candid with me. I really appreciate that. Is there any one moment you can get to? People will kill me if we don't start talking about this fight, but I saw great pictures of birds, Luke.
I know. I mean, birds are cool old now, which I know I lost like 100 followers posting that on Instagram, but I don't give a shit. Yeah. So two things. I went to the wedding I went to was much nicer than I thought it was going to be. I was actually kind of amazed at how nice it was. It was pretty cool.
Did it look like the movie Encanto at all?
No, that's more like rural Colombia. This was in Bogota, which is there's 10 million people who live there. But then when I posted on IG, I went to the national aviary of Colombia, and obviously Colombia has ridiculous biodiversity. And watching a harpy eagle 5 feet from me devour a rabbit was wild, pretty wild. So yeah, cool.
That sounds fantastic. Luke, let's get to what everybody wants here. This pay-per-view, pretty good top to bottom, but man, I love this main event. There's so many storylines. There's so many reasons to get fired up. We should have had this. We know the story of why it didn't happen. The fact that now we flipped the tables with Adesanya as the challenger coming back against the champion and star Dricus du Plessis on Saturday, I think from a, not even an X's and O standpoint, just storyline interest, it just shakes it up. This division's so sexy right now. Is there one storyline or element to this that has you more excited than anything else? And it may be what Mike said, just see if Adesanya can come back and do it again. But if he becomes a 3-time champion, he will join Randy Couture as the only fighters to do that in a single division. This is big.
It's huge. I mean, to be candid, in terms of what I'm looking forward to, I actually feel like the fight itself and the X's and O's of that is to me a little bit more interesting than the storylines around it, which I know may go against what a lot of people feel. I'm not telling anyone how to feel about it. I'm just trying to explain where I'm coming from, because I do recognize that this is a grudge match. There's obviously the kind of waiting in the wings, Robert Whittaker, Sean Strickland, Khamzat Chimaev element about who gets what that's next. That's interesting no matter what as well. I'm sure we'll get into it, but if Izzy wins, you would imagine that there might be another collision course with Poatan down the line up at 205. Again, that's sort of speculative, but it has to be on their radar. So there's a ton of interesting storylines. This is not me saying that there aren't any. There are actually a gazillion of them, but the fight itself to me is actually really, really interesting. Izzy, 34 years of age, excuse me. He's been off for nearly a year, I think 11 months in total by the time the fight happens itself. Dricus is a goddamn powerhouse at 185, and while reckless and wild at times, there is a method to his madness. He is quite physical for the weight class. His success, while it has surprised you and me at times, is in no way accidental, obviously, now that you can see the full weight of it. And, Izzy definitely underperformed against Sean Strickland coming off of that Poatan win. But Dricus is a very different kind of fight. He brings the fight to you for better or worse. And so I actually really love what the fight shows. I've been kind of thinking about this. One of the reasons why the storyline to me is less important is because, win or lose, Izzy's place in the division is kind of set. He will be the number 2 best middleweight ever, and that doesn't really change whether or not he wins or loses. Obviously, if he wins, it makes the conversation a little bit different. But even then, I don't think it surpasses I mean, I lived through Anderson Silva's title run. It was unlike anything else I've ever seen, basically. So for me, like it kind of holds it in place. What is more interesting is how potentially if Izzy can come up with some kind of solution to just this physical tank from South Africa in Dricus. That's really what I really want to see. Who cooked up the best game plan is really what I want to see.
You add in, though, the storyline of can Izzy do it again, which is what he just did to Poatan, which has come back from a guy who had stopped you. I know DDP hasn't stopped him. This is a fresh matchup. But because they had been rivals for so long now and this got extended, it kind of feels like a real rivalry that's finally going to get, that's something what it is. It just really feels deep. But Luke, I agree. I'm not really into those. I'm into the historic side of the storylines, but I'm not into who's the real king of Africa. Although I did notice that UFC went out of their way to edit Francis Ngannou completely out of the Countdown show, even though Adesanya was saying in telling the story of why he doesn't like DDP, that it was that DDP didn't respect the three kings, and then they would like show Adesanya and show Usman, never mention or show Ngannou. That's so petty. It's absurd to me. But I'm not even into those storylines either. Let's hit the odds because I'm into this matchup. DraftKings right now has -130 Israel Adesanya as the favorite, +110 Dricus du Plessis as the underdog, but he did just fine, by the way, DDP, as the underdog against Robert Whittaker, which was the big fight that got him the title shot. That's such a great win over Sean Strickland. God, if you add Adesanya in this run, there's a whole other conversation storyline-wise to be had about how big of a star DDP can be, and what do you say about his resume now, even though more people are talking about what it would mean to Adesanya. And it makes sense with the revenge angle to come back and prove once more that he's still that guy. But Luke, when I watch the preview content and really start to look at the matchup, one quote from Eugene Bearman sticks out to me from the Countdown show, and it was centered upon the idea that he said they want Izzy to go back to the tricks of old that he used on the way up to the title that he's now abandoned and bring back a lot of those, and they believe that could be the key to this matchup. How would you expound on what that means and whether that actually matters and could be a factor Saturday?
Eugene Bearman has, I think, I know some folks don't agree with this, but I think he's got a pretty strong grasp of what works in the fight game and certainly what works for his students. And if you actually like Poatan and Strickland are very different fights. They're very different fighters. They're bringing very different challenges and weapons to you. And Dricus is going to be different from both of them. But one of the things that you really, really noticed in the Strickland fight for Izzy was that his feinting just did not do him a lot of good. Like a lot of the tricks he pulls, a lot of the ways in which he puts his feinting and then shot selection together, it's become, at least in that fight, I should say, because he's been off for 11 months. But in that fight, it was very predictable. It did not really fool Sean Strickland very much at all. I know he's got a defensive style to absorb it. Again, that's part of it. But I just feel like people have kind of seen him use a lot of the same stuff over and over again. I don't know if the numbers quite bear this out, but it just feels like on top of it, the feinting works if the feinting is good. But the feinting also works if you're really throwing behind it, if you're landing behind it, right? It's the dual threat. One ultimately feeds the other. And I feel like that really wasn't the case in the fight with Strickland and some other ones as well. Like, it wasn't as potent as it once was. Guys were a little bit more in awe of it, a little bit more confused by it. And that hasn't been the case, at least not nearly as much for quite some time. And so to me, it feels like if you go back and look at, for example, if you watch some of Izzy's kickboxing fights before he ever got to the UFC, there's obviously a heavy dose of feinting. It's just a big part of what he does. But there's a lot more activity in terms of throwing. There's a lot more uniqueness to what he's throwing. There's a lot more variance to what he's throwing. He kind of got, and this is true, like GSP, when his championship run got longer and longer and longer, we all know this, people are all like, oh, he was a boring wrestler. Well, yes and no. He became a boring wrestler. He certainly did not start out that way, and through large swaths of it was really not the case at all. It was only in the end, or I'd say the last sort of big third of his career, where that was really pronounced. You can go a little bit earlier than that, maybe, but you get the idea. He's trying to control for the chaos of MMA. He did it through wrestling. Izzy tried to do it with this sort of like narrowed scope of weapons around a heavy feinting and distance game that just kind of went a little bit stale. I think what Bearman might be talking about, BC, is getting back to that state where you're throwing a little bit more actively, you're mixing it up a little bit more actively. And, part of what made Izzy great was this ability to stay active. Like during the pandemic, dude, he was constantly on airplanes, constantly remaining active, constantly taking fights, constantly being on the road. And I think it did him a lot of good. But now it might be the case. I guess we'll have to see. He's had 11 months off, both to work on any kind of physical transformation he has to, but also kind of getting back to Behrman's words, maybe accessing some things he forgot along the way. Whether he will skillfully pull that off remains to be seen. But I think Behrman, I can say this, no pun intended, at a bare minimum, the diagnosis by Eugene Behrman, I think, is right on the money. Whether he can pull that off, totally different story, right?
Yeah, very true. This is so intriguing. DDP would go as far as being quoted as saying that he feels like Adesanya's light is dimming, if not out. I certainly wouldn't go that far because as devastating as the loss to Strickland was, I don't think you can make an excuse for it, but I think it's understandable what he says about it. I think it's understandable when he wanted the DDP fight, when there was that fire between them and that face-off in the cage and the whole Battle of Africa thing, and then that fight falls apart. And then Strickland comes in and he probably looked at Strickland as a clown that he could kind of control and beat in his sleep. And then maybe, maybe Adesanya doesn't have the best training camp. Who knows? Or the right dialed in motivation level. And then it just so happened that Strickland comes through with an incredible performance and game plan. I can look back and understand that. So I don't think, when you consider the fight before that, he did what he did to Poatan and in the manner that he did, that yes, he's 35 years old now. So we do have to understand the limitations and expectations that he could be a little bit old, maybe not show up old in a fight, but show you the compromisation of age. This could be that fight. But Luke, the fact that he took this much time off and the fact that, he was dropped in that Strickland fight, but it was almost as if just couldn't find the spark or couldn't find the angle to come back and play. And as disappointing as that was, I don't have that fear, even with the 35-year-old age, that he'll be anything but exactly where he was coming into that Pereira MMA rematch. Dialed in, ready to go. Long Island Luke, can we flash these pictures? I wanted to get Luke's take on this. Luke, I mean, you can show, first is the face-off between them from their introductory press conference. So you can certainly see both the height difference and then the intensity between the two of them. Nobody, I don't believe, was called the N-word during this specific face-off. This is the second time they did. But can we show Luke how just jacked up Adesanya is? I don't have gyno jokes on the ready, Luke, but look at that body right now. What do you think about that? Do you think that we may see as refocused in Adesanya as ever because he finally did take the foot off the gas, take a break, air out mentally and physically?
Yeah, I actually feel like, again, you have to do the right thing for the right time, and staying active at one point in his career, I think, was absolutely the right call. Taking time off was probably the right call. It doesn't mean he'll win necessarily on Saturday, but was it better to take some time off and retool? I absolutely don't think that anyway that was the wrong call. Dude, look, I mean, DDP is a powerhouse, man. Yeah, the guy is a freaking tank. I mean, here's the best evidence, or at least a good way to understand it, BC. And this is why, to me, the fight with Sean Strickland's also different. Like, Strickland's not really going to go for the takedown. You know what I mean? There's a good chance that DDP will, but that's not even my point. Consider how DDP got the takedown on Robert Whittaker, right? He didn't hit a clean throw at all. He had I believe it was he was trying to throw him off the headlock, or maybe it was from a whizzer, but I'm pretty sure it was off the headlock. He didn't whip him over and then land on top. He just kind of sagged his weight to the side. Like, he just grabs a hold of you and then just leans and forces his way over. And then he hit a Sao Paulo pass, also known as a Tosi pass, which is like this very sort of physical, dominant, in-your-face, aggressive way to pass guard. Like, that's his kind of style. If you don't bulk up, or at a bare minimum have some kind of way that you're addressing that in camp, dude, you and I have learned this the hard way. DDP will run you over. He will run you over, either literally or metaphorically, perhaps both, but he will run you over. And so you have to be in a position to technically have an answer for that, yes, but you can't rely on, you know what I mean? Like, you can't rely on that deterring him. Sean Strickland will kind of absorb a little bit of that and then find his moments. DDP's not that guy. He's just not going to fight that way. So that presents some unique opportunities for offense, but it also presents a whole different series of defensive challenges that you have to be aware of. And again, not just on the physical side, but the technical side. So you're right, by the way, I said Izzy was 34, he's 35. He'll be 35, 3 weeks and 5 days old by the time the fight itself takes place. So I just don't see how, again, none of these things predict success. None of these things will tell you he's going to win. But taking the time off to get his body in a position to deal with, perhaps, now that Poatan's not in the division anymore, and it's not really a takedown threat anyway in that division, basically the most physical guy he could potentially face at 185. I'll put a little asterisk next to Khamzat Chimaev, because who the hell knows about him, but he could also be in that conversation. But this is the champ. This guy's a beast. This guy has an in-your-face grinding style. If you're not ready for that, he will tear you to pieces. So let's see what he does on Saturday.
Oh man, I'm so damn fired up. I mean, there's so many ways to look at this fight, and I mean, I don't know if this fight ends apartheid, Luke. Wait, I mean, that's not what they were fighting for. I don't know, but I just love what
apartheid ended in South Africa some time ago. In fairness,
sorry, it was the Mandela effect, Luke, that made me forget. Apparently, I thought it happened. This is big, so big for both of their careers, for their countries, and everything right there. The size difference between them. Is there anything either of them can learn from Jan Blachowicz versus Adesanya? And I say that because you saw that Izzy was taller, but this is the most DDP, the most physical presence you can kind of find in this division. Should either one of them be looking at that tape for any reason in terms of how they can use that in this fight, Luke?
Maybe.
Will that tell us anything?
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. I'm not so sure. I mean, in that fight, so first of all, that was 205, and I know Drickus is a big dude for 185. That's still, I mean, Blachowicz is still okay, maybe some, but the way in which Blachowicz got to success in that fight's a little bit different, right? Because he started out. The story of that fight is that Izzy always uses sort of more probing attacks before he closes range on his punches when he's having success anyway, and a lot of the stuff got checked. Blachowicz is really good at checking leg kicks and deterring people. So that brought Izzy a little bit closer because he had to use his hands. And that made him, among other reasons, more susceptible to the takedown. And then he got grounded out. That's also been some time. I'd also say this, like Izzy's takedown defense along the fence line is very, very good. In open space, it's not, this is true for most people who don't come from a wrestling background. In open space, it's not nearly as good. And also if you can chain things together, it's not nearly as good. And so that's really the question for DDP. DDP, if he's going to find his way to get to the takedown, and if that's a path he wants to pursue, he has to find a way to, I think, close range. Not to say he couldn't get the takedown along the fence, but I think he's going to have a lot more success not in that place, even as big and physical as he is. And again, he doesn't even need to fully execute it correctly. He gets a headlock, an overhook, something. He just kind of drops his weight. He takes people over. It's not just Whitaker. He did that too. He's done that. I mean, dude, he even pulled Darren Till on top of himself and still managed to get the better of the end in that fight as well. So to me, it's the question of how does he do that without getting necessarily along the fence line? And dude, we've seen it. He blitzes. And this is what makes this fight so exciting. Like, you can easily see a scenario, VC. Tell me if you think I'm wrong. You can easily see a scenario where, yes, one guy could finish the other one. That is possible, of course. But is it not also plausible that one of them could win round one, then the other one win rounds two, then the other one win rounds three, then the other one win rounds four? Like, there's so many different ways where one guy conceivably has the ability to win a frame and that to not continue frame over frame because of the unique contrasts that you see in play here. Of course, the one guy could finish the other one too, like that's in play as well. But I'm just saying, don't you see the same thing, that there are numerous offensive paths for this fight to go?
And I think that is why the odds are so close. I was a little bit surprised. We had mentioned that in our last episode that we did together, that I thought DDP would be the favorite based upon the levels of questions, the remaining questions that he had to answer against Sean Strickland. And I know that styles make fights and there's a different matchup and all that. But dude, I mean, seeing DDP go the 5 rounds and be kind of peaking at the end and be able to make the striking adjustments that he did. I mean, dude, if he's got that too in his game, I kind of thought he should have been favored over Adesanya. It doesn't really matter in that. But I spent a lot of the build of this fight thinking that and thinking this was DDP's fight. But then I can get caught into seeing, it's not the fact that Adesanya is in that shape. It's, I know how he can raise his game. Look, certain guys, I mean, there's such a little amount that separates greatness. But look at what somebody like Max Holloway did against Justin Gaethje. And his back was kind of against the wall in that fight where we thought he was going to take a lot of damage, even if he won. And, you know, is it worth it? And it's somewhat similar to what Adesanya already did against Pereira. Adesanya has an ability to raise himself to a higher level in the biggest moments. It's part of his, you know, super skills there. And Luke, if he raises to that level, That's going to be too much for DDP. So if that guy shows up, but it's like, that's not something you can prepare for and carve out. I think Adesanya's capable of bringing that guy in. But to your point, I could see domination either way. I could see an absolute 48-47 headache where the scores are all over the place and everyone thinks their guy won. That's all great. Give that to me. Bring it in here. I want to see that. Could DDP's ceiling get any larger? I mentioned the escalation of what he showed against Strickland. Have we yet to see the peak of what he's capable of? You wouldn't be surprised if he wrestled and controlled and kind of physically dominated Adesanya, but how much room left is there for him to show?
I actually feel like this could be, I mean, people have complained about, we haven't really talked about this, but people have complained about Izzy getting the title shot. And it's not even necessarily that I think that they don't have a point. They certainly do. It's like you lost badly and then you're off for 11 months and then you just waltz into a title shot. Like, how does that make sense? Well, the reason why it makes sense is not because he's getting it based on anything he did from a meritocratic standpoint in the short run. Of course, that's not true. What is true is, one, he's the second best middleweight of all time, win or lose on Saturday. And more to the point, this is a grudge match. They have this obligation based on what they're being paid by tourism boards to go to Australia. That's why he's getting this fight. It makes a lot of sense for the business. And for folks who don't understand this, the job of the promoter is to put on fights that people want to pay money to see. That is the job. No matter what else anybody says, that is the job. So that's why he's getting this opportunity. Now, of course, it comes with everything else we've talked about, which is, it's an exciting fight. It will probably be crazy no matter what. Okay, fine. But the reason I bring all this up is like, dude, just think about what this means for just a second. Win or lose, Izzy's place stays at number 2. But for Dricus to get a win over a guy like that, I think would be majorly validating. Understand something, like the win he got over Whitaker, no question about it. Whitaker wants a rematch. He might end up getting one depending on how things play out, but it was super legit and everything else. And we had questions to kind of clown him based on fights like the Till fight where he's, throwing Till on top of him. But we have talked about this either. The Sean Strickland factor here kind of looms large in my view. In watching that fight in real time, I thought that the DDP kind of edged it. Upon second view, I was like, I think Strickland might have edged this one actually. But of course, no crying over spilled milk. My point being is, if he goes in there against Izzy, who had all this time off, all this opportunity to get right, all this time to focus on one opponent, get his body in the shape he needs to, get his mind right, you name it, heal from injury, all the things that a guy needs to do, and then you go in there and you beat that guy. And yes, he's 35, but it's 185 and up. Different ball game. We're not talking about 155 and down where it's, a bit of a death sentence at the title level. That's not the case at 185 and up. So he's as prime as generally a middleweight contender can be. You beat a guy like that, dude, that is massively validating. Now, I don't know what it means for the UFC's designs to go into Africa, South Africa in particular, or anything like that. It's hard to say exactly what that might mean. But for DDP himself, if you finish Whitaker and then let's say he finishes Izzy this weekend, dude, are you shitting me? Like that is huge for his validation. That is huge for his resume, huge for how he'll be seen. And then again, I know we're kind of sick of like, oh, what does it mean if he goes and fights up a weight class? I don't even know what that would look like or if that's realistic. I'm not saying that. I hesitate to even bring it up, but I'm just saying also like those conversations will fucking happen. Dude,
he's impressive as shit. Watching that countdown show, like I never thought he could be this, but when you look back, dude, he had that McGregor level of not just confidence, but a vision and a plan of how he was going to get there. Like he's the fucking real deal. He's absolutely what he says he is and more. And look, when they showed in the countdown show specifically how the team diagnosed the victory over Whitaker, when we talk about that Whitaker fight, we talk about the steamrolling, but it was the fact that they turned southpaw, finding the one, what they felt was weakness in Whitaker's defense, and then exploited it and ran right over him. That obviously was like, oh, we're dealing with a different mind than we thought. We just thought this guy was big and cocky. This guy's fucking great.
Yeah. I mean, he does have, like, it's the same with Tom Aspinall. Like, Tom, I mean, I'm not comparing the two exactly. They're very different, but I'm saying Tom does have defensive liabilities. Like, those are real, but he just makes up for it because heavyweight is relatively weak and he's a dynamic athlete and his offense is incredible. Dricus has issues that show up on camera. I want to be clear about that. But he is not just some kind of marauding bruiser. That was the error that I made in assessing him, and that was the error you made. Yes, there might be some fundamental flaws. However, while in addition to being a physical powerhouse, you can clearly tell that there is a significant amount of thoughtful game planning that goes in. They have A strategies, B strategies, C strategies if all that fails. And yes, if all that fails, then they'll be in trouble. But they've got layers to their game plan. They are thoughtful guys. And it just goes to show, man, it's like 10 years ago, and this is an obvious point, but like 10, 15 years ago, it was really only the super gyms that could get guys to cook up game plans like this. Dude, they're pulling game plans out of this quite literally out of every corner on earth. So I think that both guys have their hands full this weekend, no doubt about it.
Luke, I saw I get what you say about Adesanya's place in history, and I certainly agree with that. This wouldn't take it, up 10 notches, but dude, a 3-time champion says a lot about you. I'm not comparing him to Ali, but one part of Muhammad Ali's incredible essence and belovedness and legacy was that even at advancing ages, man, he could just turn it up and remind you who he is and win a fight he wasn't supposed to, from George Foreman to the Spinks rematch, and many in between. Adesanya seems to have some level of that. Luke, if he does this, I mean, he's already secured, in terms of what he's accomplished in terms of his historical legacy. But at times, in terms of how people either beloved him or not, because his personality is, he's not afraid to flash himself and isn't always trying to be PC or be, get everybody to agree with him. He can be partially polarizing at times. But the ultimate language that fight fans respect the most is when you do exactly what we're asking him to do. Come back again after a devastating loss and once again reclaim that gold. In terms of comparing him historically, if he gets it done, there is sort of a thing he's starting to carve out. It's Randy Couture-esque. And hopefully Randy will be here at noon. I believe like this would take whether, how beloved he is. He's not Max. He's not Chuck Liddell on that level. But dude, you go back and you do this against the guy that big who's on that run. There's a side to that legacy of just aura and respect that people are going to carry on for generations after this.
I mean, nothing solves problems like winning. Nothing solves problems. To your point, like Izzy does a lot of things that even for a guy like me that's been a longtime admirer has been off-putting, like posting like, how serious it is. It's really hard to know in the world where everybody's an edgelord all of a sudden, but like posting Hitler memes and shit. Like, I don't even know what that's supposed to be and whatnot, among any number of other things you could pick up on that have rubbed people the wrong way. But at the same time, he's always been kind of this sort of, for better or for worse, a unique and free spirit. And then competitively, to the point that you raise, I mean, it has to be the case that holding on to your title over that expanse of time is more difficult than losing it and getting it back. On the other hand, there is something uniquely difficult about losing your title and getting it back, and then doing that multiple times to the point that you raise. It shows that maybe the overall consistent ability to be in a place you need to be to win is sometimes lacking. However, the ability to marshal all of the resources and everything else that exist to raise your game at the precise moment where it is required, I don't think folks understand how difficult that actually is to do. It's why you almost never see. It's very, very, very rare for someone to lose a UFC title and then get it back twice, once, and then much less another time. So, 3 times in total. To your point, he would only be the second guy in UFC history to ever do something. I mean, that's how fucking rare it is. That is how difficult it is. Usually in the UFC, if you lose your title, again, by and large, it is gone. You will not get it back. For him to do that, if he can do that on Saturday, essentially a second time and regaining it, I can't put him over Anderson Silva. But what I would be able to say is, but for arguably the best of all time, and certainly the best in that division, what he would be doing would be, I mean, I don't know how, BC, because I haven't really thought about it this way. I don't know how it would change the overall conversation about where he lands among all fighters all time, but it would have to be a substantial boost.
Yeah,
in
it's
that
folk hero
regard.
shit. It's like Paul Bunyan stuff. It's like that just toughness and that like Diesel man, that's the dude type of thing. It's hard to really put that into words, but it's that aura that you know it when you see it. And he seems to have that. And this moment would certainly just explode that right there. Love that. I love Izzy, man. For everything we've been through in this Izzy experience, Luke, this is going to be wild. But who gets it done on
Well,
Saturday? That's the question.
They just don't make them like this very often. Like middleweight has been interesting because in general it's a really weak division. Like the rank and file of middleweight is just not nearly as interesting as the rank and file of 155. However, it has also been home to some really unique champions, these two in particular, but not just them, that have shown some of the greater parts about what makes MMA great. We should say, if Dricus ends up getting a win over this guy, he ends up being part of that elite pantheon. So middleweight, a tale of sort of two divisions at the same time. I think we're going to get something pretty special on Saturday.
I expect intense face-offs this week. I'm very much looking forward to the press events, especially the press conference. We rarely actually look forward to it, but I want to see what they're slinging back and forth. I want to see the intensity levels. I want to see a lot of that. Luke, you actually said off camera over text that you'd be willing to recreate their first face-off right now at MK, but you were like, I have to be Adesanya for obvious reasons. And I was like, dude, we could probably bleep the word. We could probably bleep it out.
Happen.
Yeah.
And I'm definitely not going to use the N-word, but it might be the fashion on Twitter these days.
Luke, give me some betting insight here. Does it go the distance?
Man, I don't know. It's hard to be confident about it going the distance when you look at the odds. To your point, it's plus or minus 100 either way. Because I would imagine part of what Izzy's so they have different responsibilities. If you're Izzy, you don't want to get tagged or overcommit positionally and then end up on bottom. If you're Dricus, you don't want to overcommit and walk into something. That's really kind of those are the two sort of very general ways of what they're both trying to overcome. And so I think early on it might make them a little bit defensive, but I just feel like the way Dricus fights, it will just crack it open no matter what. Man, Izzy's tough. I didn't think he could finish Whitaker, and he finished him off. I'll say it doesn't go the distance. I'll say it doesn't. I think that it could start slow. I mean, obviously there's a chance because they're both going to,
sure.
I do think it will start defensively both guys trying to figure it out. It'll just heat up over time and potentially very quickly. But I would say the chances that it gets stopped are probably high, or at least relatively speaking, high. Do you have a different mind?
No, I think it's going the distance. I think it's going to be a little bit disputed in terms of who people thought won, because I think both are going to be able to carry out parts of their game plan, like we kind of talked about almost in an every other round scenario, or some level of ebb and flow in there. I just feel like I'm back around again on DDP can do this. And I saw enough things in that Strickland fight, even strategically, where he can figure out a way. He's obviously have to have kind of overwhelming physical moments, landing big strikes for sure, impact strikes for sure. But I'm in the belief, Luke, tell me if I'm crazy, that Izzy has just as big of a chance to go from this fight almost immediately into a light heavyweight title shot against Poatan to in some way possibly end that great rivalry with a loss as he would with a win. Could you imagine a scenario where this is a very good fight? Think Strickland versus DDP, but maybe even a little bit better. And Izzy, you're like, damn, man, for 35, for trying to become a 3-division champion, he fought his ass off, and I can even make an argument that he should have won, but he loses a split decision. And then he keeps bulking up and goes up to 205, and we have that major summit, Luke. I think that's plausible. It's possible.
Plausible. Obviously, the win would be what you really need to make that fight happen. So I would imagine that that's much at 205. I mean, what benefits Izzy is that obviously Poatan's a champion at 205, but then you got Ankalaev and Rakic happening.
That tells you that they're doing it, right? Doesn't that tell you that they're leaving Poatan open for this?
So I think there's only two possibilities. One, this one, that they're waiting to see what happens with Izzy and Dricus. That's the first one. The second one, and I don't think it's likely, but at least plausible, or at least potentially possible, maybe is a better way to put it, that they want him for some kind of backup sweepstakes for Tom, John, Stipe, somewhere involved in that if they really have to call in a Hail Mary.
That's a great point. Oh, wow.
Yeah, there's something that they clearly getting him in front of Ankalaev is not a huge priority, right? It's clearly not a huge priority. We all thought he was the prohibitive, like #1 contender. Then they're like,
Yeah,
why don't you go
boogeyman.
fight Rakic, who just lost to Yuri next? It's like, oh, I don't hate that fight. I actually like that fight, but like that's not what I expected. So they clearly have designs on him elsewhere. There's just a lot they can play with. This is my point. It's like if Izzy loses a ho-hum decision to Dricus, yeah, could he go up to 205? Yes, especially if Dricus ends up just like grinding out a 48-47 with like, you know, kind of like heavy wrestling or something. Yes, that is certainly possible. Or if Izzy loses but rocks Dricus a couple of times, you're like, oh, let's see what it looks like in a different scenario. You know, but there's a lot of scenarios where that gets blown up. Winning is really the one where that makes the most sense. But if Izzy doesn't win and also kind of looks bad, who knows what, I mean, do they really want to do Poatan versus Ankalaev or Poatan versus Rakic versus Poatan against Aspinall? You know what I mean? Like, there's just a lot of ways.
I believe that that their plan is to make Izzy no matter what against Poatan. That's my belief.
No matter what?
Well, no matter what, I think it's their plan next, no matter what. Well, I mean, short of Izzy getting knocked out here. Long Island Luke of the Main Card Minute Gambling Podcast, where Luke, I don't know if you heard me, on Saturday, I tuned into the pod. It was Gaffney Jim and Long Island Luke. They did bong rips on the air. It was tremendous television. It was wild. All right. L.I. Luke, where are you going with this on Saturday?
I've been torn all week, and I am a self-proclaimed Izzy fan, but I think I'm riding with DDP on this one.
All right. Right. Well, once again, Long Island Luke riding that D. Yeah, there we go.
I can't hear him. What did he say?
He said that he's riding with DDP.
By what?
I see it going the distance. I'm going to say decision.
He's going distance. He's going distance.
We're going distance. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. All right. I guess we'll see.
Luke, let's talk this co-main event. It's pretty big for the flyweight division here. Steve Erceg, fresh off of nearly after just 3 fights, nearly winning the UFC flyweight title against Pantoja in a great effort that was very close. He will be a favorite minus 185. Sorry, I'm old now. I'm 46 now. Against the plus 154 Kai Kara France, an absolutely sizzling matchup. Why does nobody seem to care about this right now? Do they not want Erceg in this fight? What's going on here, Luke?
Maybe I misheard you, but I'm looking at the DraftKings odds here. I see Erceg as minus 205 according to our friends at DraftKings. Did you say that?
I refreshed a couple minutes ago and I got 185, minus 185.
I'm on bestfightodds.com. I'm not sure, but either way, they have Erceg as the favorite. Dude, this fight bangs. I mean, this fight is super interesting. You've got Kai Kara France, who I think has lost maybe 1 or 2 in a row, but certainly coming off that Albazi loss, which was, you know, Albazi might be the future champion. I don't know how big of a blemish that actually ends up being. I think that loss will, quote unquote, age well, so to speak. Erceg having a win against Pantoja in the palm of his hand and then giving it away with some questionable decision-making down the stretch. What I can't quite tell, BC, is that war against Pantoja, because it was a bit of a war. I mean, there was a lot of grappling, but it was a lot of damage back and forth. Will he be a little bit under the gun because of something like that, or does an experience like that really raise his game? My hunch is it's the latter. It's going to raise his game. And remember, Kai Kara France has had of late some concussion issues as well. Not that I think that will necessarily deter him. I think he's got a style that kind of is baked in at this point, but I guess we'll see. Nevertheless, it's an Aussie versus a Kiwi, and I feel like this fight is, I mean, the odds are relatively close, but could be even closer. But for me, for Erceg is really where I've got my eye on. Kai Kara France is certainly not past it. I don't think that is true, but Erceg has, I think, significant upside, assuming that Pantoja fight didn't short run or long run wreck him. And so I'm very, very curious to see how he'll rebound from something where he was this fucking close to winning a UFC title, barely into a UFC run. I mean, here's what's interesting about this fight, BC. Like, if you look at the guys he fought a bunch of guys. Like, the best guy he fought before Pantoja was Matt Schnell, a good fighter, make no mistake, a good fighter, but not a guy who I think has been top 5 ever. I could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure that's true. And Kai Kara France, not a guy who won a title, but has been top 5 over time. So this is one of those interesting cases where it's like, where actually it does Erceg fall? We know he's better than guys who are top 10-ish or outside the top 10 for sure, but he fell short against Pantoja. Was it just because Pantoja is really, really elite and he made one bad call, or is it because maybe he'll actually naturally settle somewhere in that 2-5, 2-7 space? And that's just what the ceiling actually looks like. This fight is going to give us a much better answer to that.
It absolutely will. I would thought what's interesting about this is the scenario that you laid out for Usyk correctly, that he's trying to make good on kind of botching, but narrowly getting that championship. Look, it's a 3-month turnaround for him for this fight, which is short for sure. But Kai Kara-France almost had a similar moment, I thought, in the Brandon Moreno fight. I remember thinking that was going to be his moment. He was going to break through, win the interim championship, get the undisputed chance, and really kind of become a thing, see if he can build a reign. Moreno, to his credit, rallies to get him there. And I don't put the Albazi loss as some huge indication that he'll never be that guy, but he was so close to his moment, and look at what happened here. I wonder if that plays into the motivation level, and we really see, not desperation, but we see, I mean, you're going to need to see a lot of KKF here to get over Usyk. It's such a good matchup. It's such a tough fight for him, but he was almost in that same spot. What does he have left in the tank, in the backbone, meaning Kai Kara-France, to come back and show us? Can he raise his game even higher? Luke, I felt if not for that misstep there against Moreno, he might already be here with the belt.
Here's the thing about the Moreno fight. You actually look at how he got stopped. They were on a clinch break, and he's circling out, and Moreno at long distance hit him with a body kick as he was moving away, and it folded him, and then he got finished off from there. That's just not something that Usyk throws a lot of. I'm not saying that one guy could follow the other guy's game plan. I'm just saying Moreno is one of these guys who kind of just takes offense wherever he can find it. Usyk is a little bit more thoughtful, and in fact likes to get a little bit closer to people to make his boxing work a little bit better. So it's a much different kind of fight. And Kai Kara-France, very good takedown defense in flyweight, very good scrambling, highly experienced against good guys, and some good boxing himself. You recall, Cody Garbrandt tried to kick him in the leg, and then I did it at the wrong distance, and Kai Kara-France made him pay for it. So this is a really, really interesting one where I could, styles make fights. Styles make fights, absolutely. Kai Kara-France, for example, is he better on the feet than Pantoja? Yes. On pure striking terms, is he better on the feet than Pantoja? Yes. Is Pantoja's ability to mix it up and then kind of change the dynamic of striking due to some of the wrestling and the backpacking that makes that all go away. And you saw Usyk have some decent ability to challenge for that. Well, none of that is relevant here. None of that is relevant here. I mean, maybe Usyk goes for a takedown, and I think that is at least possible. Also, it's a 3-round fight, not a 5-round fight, so you kind of got to get to work right away in this one too, which makes it. Or is it actually? Let me ask: am I wrong? Is it a 3-round fight or a 5-round fight?
I've known Roman to be a 3-round.
It's 3. It's 3.
It is a 3-round fight.
Yeah, it's 3. It's 3. It's a 3-round fight. This is exactly my point. You got to get right to work. It's a different fight. It's a totally different fight. So I could see a case for Kai Kara-France, who is very good about movement, very quick, in space, out of space, changing angles, turning. I could see that giving Usyk some problems. This is going to be a big test of Usyk, I think, his ability to trap an opponent with his own footwork and his own offense, rather than letting a guy come to him in the way that Pantoja would just kind of walk into him. Kai Kara-France is going to play a bit of a different game. Moreno had an answer for it because of the way Moreno fights. Some of those things are just not going to be available to Usyk. This is a big chess match here.
Yeah, Usyk comes in at number 7, Kai Kara-France at number 4. Oh, I love that fight too. Let's talk about this lightweight tilt that really could be a big boost here, especially for Mateusz Gamrot, but never count out Dan Hooker. Luke, this matchup is what it is. It's probably going to be entertaining as heck. They got Mateusz Gamrot as a -325 favorite at DraftKings at this moment, unless your bestfightodds.com link is updated faster than mine, Luke. Dan Hooker plus 260.
Yeah.
Where are we at, in your opinion, in the true stakes of this? Like, is this Gamrot's moment to I mean, he's been close before, but he's got to kind of push through and get out of this crowded group there, top 55.
I mean, dude, you got to love Dan Hooker because he will, I mean, there's a lot of guys who are like, oh, I'll fight anybody. And then when it comes time to fight someone, they're like, yeah, I'm not doing that shit. Dan Hooker is that guy. Dan Hooker's absolutely that guy, and he's skillful. I think he really wanted to fight on this card. He made no secret of that, trying to get a fight for 305. I don't know, man. Listen, you definitely don't want to count out Hooker for a lot of reasons. He's very experienced. He kind of knows what he's up against here. Like, Gamrot's going to wrestle him beginning of the bell to the first bell to the last. And so there's some level of predictability with that, and I think that's cool. At the same time, it's just a very tough matchup, and part of the reason Dan Hooker's got double-digit losses is not because he sucks; it's because he just takes fights that are very, very difficult that a lot of other people avoid, and he really wanted this one. Gamrot signed up. The odds are, I think, pretty fair. Hooker has experience in ways could he replicate the Jalen Turner fight? Maybe. maybe. But Turner lost that one too, right? So it's a tough one. Like, Gamrot should not lose this fight. He could, because Hooker, the one thing I'll say, like, for example, the difference between this fight and like the Islam fight, Islam has much better, I think, control that leads to positions that set up submissions and then submissions themselves. Gamrot's not really that guy. He's kind of like a hold you ground and pound, but it's not super vicious ground and pound. It's good, but it's not great. That gives Hooker some life. That gives him an ability to get back to the feet or get another round potentially. So it's different in that sense. And that makes Gamrot a little bit more open. At the same time, Gamrot is arguably the best pure wrestler at 155. Like, that's a tough guy to beat, man. It's a really tough guy to beat. So I wish him luck. He's going to need it.
Hooker's 34 years old. He is ranked 11th, but is coming on off of that 2-fight win streak. So it is not a bad fight to make at this moment, but it really seems to be about what could be next with it for Gamrot. He comes in at number 5. And Luke, that run he's on, winning 7 of 8, a lot of big names on there, from RDA and Fiziev and the Tarantula down to Arman Sarukian. And I know some of these fights are close and disputed either way, and he had that decision loss to Dariush. But we seem to be asking Gamrot a lot. We love the wrestling, but to be a little bit more. I think sometimes, like, he's just like, this is who I am, Luke. Is who he is enough to get to the title level?
Generally speaking, no. Generally speaking, no. At times, it is enough to get a big and inspired win. I do think that is true. I don't think it's, I just, you have to have, he's a little bit too old, a little bit too beaten up, and there's been too many different styles that have given him problems. Edson Barboza gave him problems. Islam Makhachev gave him problems. Even to an extent, it's controversial, a disputed decision or whatever, but even Paul Felder, gave him problems. Like, there's lots of different, that's the issue, right? Like, there's just a lot of different types that have shown to give him difficulty. At the same time, this is a guy who has a stoppage win over Gilbert fucking Burns. He is a tough customer with some real good kickboxing skill and some good submission skill as well. So it really comes down to, can he make Gamrot make an error? To what extent can he either negate the takedown, which I don't think he can, but to what extent can he mitigate it and then get back to his feet and then do damage? Really, these are not likely paths to victory, but they're not completely unwalkable either.
I was asking you really if Gamrot had what it takes with the 7 of 8.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you meant Hooker. Well, okay, but the
no.
Gamrot situation is a little bit kind of similar in one particular way, which is, what is his ace in the hole? His ace in the hole, and really the central part of his game, and there's not a whole lot else to it, is the wrestling. Now, that wrestling is very, very good. You can go back to the Dariush fight, and I know he lost that one, but he was giving it as well as he was taking it. Saryukian, you just pick whichever one you want. This is what he just came off the Dos Anjos one, if memory serves, right? So he's got a lot going for him in the right direction, but the striking is functional. There appears to be not much of a submission threat. The ground and pound is fine, but it's not super elite and dangerous. There's not a lot of passing. There's not a lot of like hardcore back taking. It's just a lot of control, and that is valuable. I'm not saying he's like, a lightweight version of Muhammad Mokaev. There's a little bit more to it than that, but not enough for like a title fight, I don't think, especially over the course of 5 rounds. 3 rounds like this, yeah, he's really tough to beat for sure. But against 5, without those other pieces of the game really being a part of it, it's possible, but unlikely.
All right, Luke, let's go to the heavyweight division because it's referendum time for 31-year-old Tai Tuivasa. Or is it, right? He's so exciting. He makes fun fights. Of late, the last 4, he gets stopped in those fights. Cyril Gane, Pavlovich, Volkov, Marcin Tybura last time out. He draws Jairzinho Rozenstruik, who's coming off a win himself against Shamil Gassiev. And when we look at the odds at the moment here, -230 Rozenstruik, your favorite, +190 Tai Tuivasa. Luke, Long Island Luke Noseda, son of an Australian, by the way, was trying to argue with me before this show that you can't cut Tai. He's young and too fun. Is he fighting for his job here, Luke? It's not Tony Ferguson levels of losing skid, but 5 would be bad, especially by stoppage. This is what we talk about every time he fights.
This is the thing, right? You're losing to Gane, interim champ, Pavlovich, fought for an interim title at a bare minimum. Okay, Volkov, who's kind of right there now, like that's obviously a very tough guy to beat, and certainly proven to be top of the division or near it anyway. But then you start to lose to Tybura, and it's like, okay, now you're losing to like the B-level guys at heavyweight, right? And that's a problem. That is a different thing altogether. And he had a losing streak before, which he then turned around and made a big winning streak. It's like, how does the guy who beat Derek Lewis lose to Rosenstrike? Well, he will if he's just completely damaged goods at this point, And if you follow him on social media and seen some of the interviews he's done, he's been training with Gokhan Saki, I think, out of Dubai, and has really tried to. He said this has been a very different camp. I know all these guys say that all the time, but he does appear to look like refreshed and ready to go. But with all the damage he's taken and all the growth that's required, and like Rosenstrike is a limited heavyweight, but he is an accurate striker. He's an accurate puncher. In fact, you go back to like the loss to Francis. Look at how well he landed on Francis. Francis just kind of ate it and then just lunged and threw crazy shit. But he was landing on him. Like, he lands quite accurate. Remember, he was landing on Overeem, even though he was getting taken down at times. So, like, it's one of those things where it's like, Ty should be able to beat a guy like this. But if he can't, and I think Ty's, 31, Rosenstrike 36. If he can't, it's like, I'm not saying if you can't beat him, you can't beat anyone in the division. But if you're losing to the Rosenstrikes and the Tyburas of this division, you're C class. And we thought he was maybe kind of flirting with the A class. It would be a bad loss. It would be a very, very bad loss. We should make no bones about it.
Yeah, it's an honest way to say it. I hate that I even have to say this, but does the fact that he could be a Francis Ngannou opponent factor into him getting re-signed if he does lose? I mean, it's heavyweight, so he's still kind of young enough to kind of take it serious. I need him to take it serious with fitness and obviously with boxing. I need him to put more. I know he treats it as a big fun party and let's cash checks, and it's his right to do that, Luke, and feed his family that way. But like, if he takes it serious, I don't think it's over. I think there's still life there to a certain point.
Yeah, it's just the way he lost against Tybura and Volkov the way he lost to Gane was inspiring, right? Because he got beaten up, but he was gutting it out and throwing back, and it was tough and blah blah blah. And then, I think Pavlovich blew him out of the water. And so, okay, well, Pavlovich is the big, strong guy. And then, Volkov, okay, again, still kind of a difficult guy to win. But, I don't know, losing to Tybura is a bad sign. It's just a really bad sign. Again, it looks like he has taken it seriously. It does. There are options for him for reasons that you bring up, but losing to these two guys would be quite the fall from grace.
It would be like watching a Spivak Tybura rematch in a Fight Night main event. Okay, yeah. Luke,
Dude,
is there any other?
Was that not? I didn't see it, but like everyone on my timeline was like, "What the fuck is this shit?" Like, not just the fight, but like
we said that one got booked. What are you doing? I know you have an out here. You got to get back to your lovely family and continue this great mental break, Luke. But I got to tell you, don't even mention my pants. It's a good-ass fight. Women's flyweights, Casey O'Neill versus Luana Santos, making a quick turnaround after sort of her breakthrough win moment. This is a good-ass fight, bro.
It's a great fight. Like, obviously, O'Neill got bodied by Ariane Lipski, but Lipski, if you watch that fight, was tagging her on the feet, and it was actually hurting her on the feet, which led to like a bad shot, which led to her ultimately getting finished off on the ground. That's different than Luana Santos, who doesn't really have the same kind of striking, but obviously has a great background in judo and is dangerous on the ground. You just saw her like mollywop Maria Agapova. So with O'Neill, it's like, okay, some of the same dangers in the clinch and on the ground present themselves, but not nearly the same kind of threat on the feet. And then O'Neill had just changed her striking coach prior to the Lipski fight. So she actually gets, I'm not going to say an advantageous fight, but a big element of what went wrong against Lipski is now being removed. And then now I would say slightly more danger in the clinch and on the ground, but she likes the ground. She likes to wrestle. She likes to be there. So it's actually this is one where could go either way. I'm not sure what the odds are. I've not double checked them, whatever, doesn't matter. But I feel like, not that it's some kind of disaster she loses here, but it's a much more winnable one. And it's an interesting style clash of two people who like to be involved in the ground in the clinch. Lipski also threw her from the clinch, which is a lot of what you see from Santos. So fun fight, very fun fight.
Yeah, plus 150 King Casey, minus 180 Luana Santos. And Luke,
About right.
I didn't mean to miss over that pay-per-view opener. The Leech at welterweight, Jiang Liang against Carlos Prates. That could be fun too. Holy crap!
Prates is an interesting guy. Where if you look at him on tape, it has not appeared to me super impressive. But he's got the win over Trevin Giles, and he's got the win over Radke, I believe is his name. And
with the
he
knee,
blew the
right?
doors. Yeah, he blew the doors off both those guys. You know, kind of a long Muay Thai style, and makes some fundamental errors, but is persistent. And that, I think he's undefeated in his UFC run. So a little bit older as a prospect. I think it's like 30, 31 years old as well. But that could be a fun fight. I mean, the question is like, really, where is the Leech in all of this? Who's been off for a long time, hasn't won in a long time. So, like, what are we going to get out of him in all of this? I think that's really a little bit more of an interesting question for me.
Luke, what's your future? I mean, you're going to come home, and I'm going to go on vacation, and I believe the great Chuck Mindenhall might be taking my chair on Monday. I don't know if that's confirmed or if that is confirmed. But I look forward to rejoining with you when we both come back very refreshed.
Yeah, man. This was a great vacation. Like, I really fucking needed this one, and you know, my daughter's kept me busy in the pool. As you can see, do I look tan to you? I must
You
look
do.
tan.
You,
Yes?
you look fit
Yeah.
too, Luke. I don't mean to come on to you. I mean, but you look fit at the moment.
Yeah, well, I've been drinking every single. I mean, I get like 2 drinks every day. I've been drinking like every day, but it's been. This was a great. This was.
No, that was actually Luke's ass. That was so. Yeah.
This was a good trip, and I've got. I'll tell folks. When I get back, you won't know this, but I've got a Mike Israetel interview set up, BC, and ready for this one. I've got a Frank Martin interview set up and a Bomac interview set up when I get back. And how about this? How about this? Ready? I got a Derek James interview set up when I get back. All the same week.
Shit.
All the same week. So
Luke Thomas is like, yeah.
I've been
blazing.
hustling on vacation, my friend. I've been hustling.
Wow, you're a hustler. Yeah, that's great, Luke. I'm really excited about that. Seriously. So enjoy the rest of the trip. I hope Tukes has some amazing moments in your lovely wife as well. I don't know if Abuela's with you too. I'm asking too many personal
Yes, she was here. She joined us for basically the entire trip.
Oh,
so
let's do it, Abuela. Yes. It's her time,
Oh,
Luke.
I meant to tell you. Hey,
no, seriously, let her cook. I like her cook.
She has been. Tuki lost her first tooth last night.
Oh, the Tukes! Is there a what do you call that guy? The tooth fairy.
Okay, so in the United
Colombia.
States, maybe Europe, I don't know, but in the United States, we have the tooth fairy. I don't know if it's just Colombia. I think it's most Spanish-speaking cultures. I don't know, but it's definitely here. They don't have the tooth fairy. They have a guy by the name of Raton Perez. Rat Perez is
Rat bastard. Yeah.
And what his deal is, it's the same deal. They give you money or whatever for your tooth, but he uses in their lore, he uses the tooth to build his houses. So we had to tell her that my wife was like, if she loses the tooth in the United States, you can have the tooth fairy. If she loses it here, it's for Raton Perez. So Raton Perez gave her some money yesterday.
No doubt the origin story of that is a guy that was called Rat who would go into elderly people's houses in Colombia, take out the tooth with the gold in it, and then just melt it down and sell it, Luke. And that's how he became.
I mean, I like how you turned that into theft and elderly abuse. It might be a heartwarming story of, other ways. But yeah, anyway, she lost her first tooth. She was elated. It was cool.
That is so awesome. Luke, can't wait to rejoin with you. Oh, Mike Heck was great today. By the way, shout out to that guy. Do you think he has disgusting internet history? I'm saying really nice things about Mike Heck, but do you think if we looked closer, we'd find something?
I mean, I think if you looked up like what kind of porn he enjoys, it's probably appalling, but that's true for a lot of us. You know what I'm saying?
He's a real nice family man, Luke. He's a real nice guy, and he did very well.
Those are always the ones who are like, well, I won't even really get into it, but who stop this,
All right. Well, Luke, I'm going to sign off with you and then say goodbye. But thank you for joining us. It's been a pleasure. Get home safely. And when you come back, bring it. All right? All right?
Hey,
just walk around with your...
Obviously, I'll be back on MK Studios on Monday. And I think Chuck will be with me. And we're going to bang everyone with a big UFC 305 review. So can't wait.
That's going to be so good. Can't wait to watch that remotely. Thank you, Luke Thomas. I'm saying goodbye to him. I got one more thing to say to the people here. Thank you for joining us on today's Morning Kombat. I appreciate you. I will also be back after Luke, very refreshed and ready to go and take this show on our continued plan to the next level. But Long Island Luke, are you there or are you busy with Luke Thomas?
I'm here, man. How we doing?
I just wanted to get your support, your emotional support. I just wanted to announce to the people that, for weeks, months, days, hours, and years, the few of you that come here for, come here for Luke, stay for BC, though, have been on me about doing something. And I didn't want to do it for many reasons, and I'm not going to bore you with all those now. But I came around. So when I get back from vacation, I'm going to take this serious, too. It's not Luke's not going to be the only one guns blazing. You want the Brian Campbell Experience YouTube channel? You got it. Yeah, you got it. You got it. All right. A lot of art, a lot of weird art coming your way. All right. So stay tuned when I return. Thank you. I don't know if they're ready. I don't know if I'm ready for this, Long Island Luke.
BC about to take over MMA YouTube.
Or maybe even boxing, maybe life YouTube, maybe just YouTube. All right, there it is right there. So hopefully the main card minute has continued blessings and bong rips as well. Thank you, Long Island Luke. Special thanks again to Luke Thomas, Mike Heck. Thank you for watching and joining. Enjoy this UFC 305 fight week. Enjoy the fights on Saturday. Chuck and Luke will mix it up next Monday. Take care of yourselves, guys, up here first, okay? It's not selfish to take care of this first. You can do it, and you're going to get through this. Watch. You'll see. BC, we're out of here. Thank you.